Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku had Pro Quirk Part 2. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 3, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story SpeakerForTheDead from 𝐴𝐿3. So let's start the video. So here's the thing. Midoriya hates being late. Truly despises it. Perhaps it's some deep-seated fear of being too late to save someone. Perhaps it's just anxiety. Whatever the reason, Izuku decided to try to arrive at the UA move-in day 30 minutes early. This is why he planned to take the early train, which runs about half an hour earlier than his normal train. But the connecting train from the dojo leaves another half hour early. It would be bad to miss that one, so he has to leave even earlier to get to the station on time. The necessity of being early for a train compounds down the train schedule. The outcome being Izuku standing outside of UA's gate, comically oversized duffel bag slung over his shoulder, a box of posters and notebooks under one arm, and a collapsed 𝐴𝐿 under the other, being stared down by a stony-faced hero. "You do realize," Cementos asks in his gravelly voice, "that you're 3 hours early to move in?" "Yeah," Midoriya thinks. "Anxiety's a bitch." "Whatever," the cement hero rumbles when Izuku only gives an apologetic shrug as an answer. "Your building is around the corner, Dorm 1A of Heights Alliance. Room assignments are on the entrance table and marked by your student number. Good luck, kid." Suddenly realizing he's been dismissed, Midoriya stumbles over the gateway as he walks onto campus, wondering if it's too late to ask for the hero's autograph. Or too early. Calling back his thanks to the cement hero, Izuku rounds the corner and takes in the sight of the building that will be his home for the next 3 years. This is it, Izuku thinks, shrugging his duffel bag higher onto his shoulders as he stares at the twin wings of the dorm. The start of My Hero Academia. There's a stack of folders on a table by the entrance, just as Cementos said, and Izuku flips through them till he finds the one labeled with his student number, 042, and plucks his key out of it. Inside the folder is also a map of the dorm room and common areas of campus, such as the cafeteria and workout gyms, as well as a set of dorm rules that mostly covered conduct and curfews. He's sorting through the new information in the folder as he pops the up button of the elevator with his hip, sending the surprisingly roomy elevator to the 5th floor. Maybe it's to accommodate students with mutations or quirks like Mount Ladies. He wonders over the size. UA surely does think of everything. The hallway is carpeted, muffling the sounds of his footprints as Izuku strolls down the rows of doors, searching for the one he's assigned to, and finding it at the far end of the hall. "Home sweet home," he comments, hearing the click of electronics as the lock authenticates his key physically and digitally as he unlocks the door, stepping into his room. It's certainly not a massive room, but it's bigger than he had expected. It's larger than his room at the Bakugu's and the one he uses at the dojo. In the corner sits a desk and chair. On one wall there's a bookshelf, and on the other there's a small closet and dresser. The bed is also bigger than he expected. Having heard horror stories of tiny twin-sized beds in dorms, Izuku is pleasantly surprised to see a full-sized bed, one that's long as well, so hopefully his feet won't hang off the edge like they do at the Bakugu's house. Setting down 𝐴𝐿, who unfolds but remains deactivated, next to the stack of boxes that he had mailed ahead of time at Bastion's advice. Izuku takes a moment to extract his speakers from the boxes and set them up around the room. Pulling out his phone, he wirelessly connects to them and says aloud, "Hey Roman 6, can you play my workout playlist?" Hatsume's creation speaks up from his phone, voice echoing about the speakers. "You got it, boss." Loud electric piano sounds are followed by a fast-paced drum tapping, and Midoriya begins bouncing his head along to the music, before freezing. Stepping outside, he shuts his door and listens carefully. Grinning because he hears nothing when the door is shut, he thinks, "Thank God for soundproofing," as he steps back inside, closing the door behind him. Shooting a quick text to Uraraka, telling her that his door is unlocked, and that she can come and grab him once people start introducing themselves, Izuku tosses his phone on the bed. Cracking his neck and his knuckles, the green-haired man calls, "Roman 6, turn it up." Perfect. The music swells to pulse-thumping volumes as Izuku grins, snatching up his first box of belongings. "Now let's begin." Uraraka lets out a groan, arching her back to relieve a bit of her stomach's soreness as her bed thumps to the floor, the last piece she wanted to rearrange in her room settling into place. Zero gravity makes for an easy move and experience, all of her belongings having weighed nothing as she toted them up to her room on the 4th floor. But all that quirk use has made her thirsty. So the pink-cheeked girl grabs her keys, water bottle, and phone, roving out in search of water or tea. Of course, she didn't have to roam long. Only as far afield as the joint common room and kitchen, where there was a water bottle filling station. And isn't that just fancy? As well as it being something that tickles her thrifty heart. Buying plastic water bottles is so much more expensive and bad for the environment than reusable bottles. Filling up her bottle and gulping from it like a castaway victim, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 meanders towards the common room, where a group of people has assembled near the couches, chattering and laughing amongst themselves. A tall boy is scolding a kid with weird elbows and egg grape. 3 men are chatting in the corner, each one looking like a rock, a bird, and a human octopus respectively. There's also a girl in the corner, looking like a picture of sophisticated grace, as she reads a scarily thick book in a comfortable armchair. A pink-haired girl breaks off from where she's speaking to a well-muscled, sharp-toothed man as 𝐬𝐻𝐸 approaches. Hey, she approaches 𝐬𝐻𝐸, a wide grin on her black-eyed face. I'm Mina Ashido. What's your name? 𝐬𝐻𝐸 Ochako, she replies, slightly taken aback at the other girl's exuberance. Nice to meet you, Mina. Yeah, Mina pumps a fist in the air. You too. After a minute of discussing their move and experiences, Mina interrupts. Hey, I'm trying to collect everyone for a little meet and greet. Mina sweeps an arm about, gesturing to the small gathering of students. Are you in? Yeah, that sounds fun, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 agrees with a grin. I need to go get my friend from upstairs first if that's okay. That's fine, Mina says with a shrug. I've been sweeping the floors gathering people up. But I still have to do the 4th and 5th floor. And oh boy was there an angry guy on the 3rd floor. So I'll come with you. Okie dokie, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 agrees amicably. As the pair makes their way to the elevator, they are joined by the girl who was reading, a faint blush dusting her cheeks. I overheard you two talking about going upstairs to gather the rest, she explains sheepishly, holding up her book. And I figured that I should put this up if we are to be introducing ourselves. I will accompany you to the 5th floor. If that is okay? Of course, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 assures. Mina adding on. The more the merrier. Oh, how rude of me. I never introduced myself. The black-haired girl apologizes as the elevator doors close. My name is Yaoyorozu Momo. It is a pleasure to meet you both. One day, I set my eyes up to the sky. Izuku sings the lyrics as he slots a few of his analysis notebooks onto the shelves above his desk. Voice loud and off-key, but drowned out by the loud music. And like a plane, my dreams were passing by. He presses a box against the wall with his chest, so he can use both hands to unload the rest of his books on the bookshelf. Letting out a muffled fuck as the box drops away, and he sees a large ink stain left behind on his t-shirt. This was one of my favorite shirts, he thinks, annoyed as he strips it off and tosses it into the laundry hamper, not bothering to put a new one on. Hopefully I can clean that off. And I awoke to tears that had filled my eyes. Bending down, Midoriya pops open the 3rd to last box and extracts his portable pull-up bar with a grin on his face. This one is a special design by Hatsune that doesn't need a door frame to attach to, and can hang in the middle of the ceiling. Hanging it up, Izuku grips the handles and does 10 quick pull-ups in succession. Now I can squeeze in a workout while I unpack, he mutters to himself with a grin. Nice. I need to spread my wings out and fly. Unseen on his bed, Midoriya's phone buzzes with a notification from 𝐬𝐻𝐸. Momo feels out of place. Maybe it's the way Mina and an electric blonde named Kaminari dominate the conversation as she trails behind them. Maybe it's the way 𝐬𝐻𝐸 and a tired man named Shinsu chat quietly, discussing the entrance exams after they gathered Shinsu from his room on the 5th floor. Maybe it's the way Shoto Todoroki stands next to her, the other recommendation student stoically yet awkwardly avoiding conversation with everyone as 𝐬𝐻𝐸 leads the way to her friend's door, which is right next door to Shinsu. It's probably the fact that she is sheltered. She knows her parents have a good reason for her schooling to have been done through a series of private tutors, rather than going to a real school. The heir of the Yaoyorozu Corporation, a girl with an insanely exploitable quirk, naturally needed to be guarded during her formative years. But as a result, she's lost out on an experience that most kids have as they grow up. Making friends, not that she was friendless. She had a passable relationship with Todoroki and Ida. Their parents roaming in the same circles had led to them being introduced during high society events. It's just that she has no experience with the more organic process of going from stranger to friend. Momo is broken out of her thoughts as Uraraka knocks on her friend's door, at the end of the same hall that Momo's room is on. After a moment with no reply, the pink-cheeked girl knocks once more, only to receive no answer once again. He should be in there. The girl wrings her hands nervously. He sent me a text asking him to come to get him once he was ready. Maybe he's asleep, Mina supplies. I can melt his doorknob off. We're not vandalizing school property before our first day is over, Momo scolds the acidic woman. Someone has to be the voice of reason here, the creation quirked girl thinks. And it looks like no one else is up to the task. Awa, Mina whines, grinning to take the sting out of her words. You're no fun. He's probably just not heard us because of his music, Shinsu tiredly comments. You can't tell from out here because of the soundproofing. But some of his music was leaking through our shared wall, so it must be pretty loud. Well, Deku did say his door was unlocked, Uraraka says. So should we just open it? The choice is taken out of their hands as Todoroki silently leans forward and turns the handle, the door swinging open and music with a driving beat spilling out of the room as he does. Momo can feel herself blushing as she recognizes the man in the room. I was right. He is incredibly well-muscled, the unbidden thought popping into her head. In the middle of the room, a long-haired man's back is facing them, muscles bulging as he effortlessly does pull-ups at a high speed, a thin layer of sweat making his bare skin glisten in the light. Mina slowly raises her phone and snaps a picture of the sight. Mina, no, Uraraka hisses, half-heartedly trying to wrestle the phone out of the pink-haired girl's grip. A faint dusting of red staining her cheeks as she keeps an eye on the man. Mina, yes, the girl says, snatching her phone back. Momo feels her blush spreading across her face as the man effortlessly contorts his body, legs swinging up and hooking onto the pull-up bar as he flips, hanging by his knees as he transitions seamlessly into upside-down sit-ups. The man's eyes are closed, but everyone's attention is drawn to his washboard abs instead of his face. Mina raises her phone again to snap another picture, but the settings must have changed as she and Uraraka struggled over the device, because this time the flash goes off as the picture is taken. The man must have seen the flash through his closed eyelids, because he opens his eyes and blinks dumbly at the 6 people standing in the doorway. Ooh, he opens his mouth, hair brushing the ground as he pauses mid-sit-up. Hi. To say Midoriya Izuku is confused would be an understatement. He's upside down, music thumping in his ears, and staring at 3 of the most attractive girls he's ever seen, 2 of which he recognizes. It's good to see Uraraka again, as they hadn't seen each other since the exam, and he's glad to see the beautiful girl who had run headfirst into him made it in as well. The pink-skinned girl seems to be licking her lips and staring at him hungrily, and Uraraka and the exam girl are blushing heavily for some reason. He's wondering about why that is when his thoughts are interrupted by Shinsu face-palming and saying, Hey Midoriya, why don't you put a shirt on? Realization dawns on Izuku as he cranes his neck upwards and notices his bare chest on view for everyone to see. Letting out an embarrassingly high-pitched squeak, the green-haired man rolls off his pull-up bar and quickly pulls on the first shirt he can grab out of his closet. Looking up, Midoriya sees the purple-haired man roll his eyes at him. That's not much better, he drawls. In his haste, Midoriya had pulled on one of his pre-growth spurred shirts, so it looks like he was wearing a skin-tight crop top that says dress shirt on it. Letting out a long-suffering sigh, Midoriya mentally gives up and addresses the group. So, why are you guys in my room? Hiya Deku, Uraraka cheerily waves, the blush having faded from her cheeks. We were just gathering everyone for a meet and greet, and you were the last one. You didn't hear us knocking, so Todoroki just opened the door. The heterochromatic man in question gives a curt nod from the back of the group, as Midoriya realizes that his playlist is still pumping loudly. So Izuku snatches up his phone and pauses it. Sorry about that, Midoriya apologizes sheepishly. Guess I got distracted. That's fine Midori, the pink-skinned girl exclaims. Nice to meet ya, I'm Mina Ishido. Midoriya Izuku, Midoriya replies, thinking, Midori? It's nice to meet you as well, Ishido. Turning to Shinsu with a grin, Izuku congratulates. Hey Shinsu, good to see that you made it in. No small thanks to you, the purple-haired man waves off with a small smile. Good to see you too. Accepting his thanks with an easy grin, Midoriya turns to the tall ponytailed girl. Congratulations to you as well, miss. I'm afraid I never got your name. Ah yes of course, she replies. a faint dusting of red still staining her cheeks as she pointedly avoids looking at the strip of skin showing between his shirt and pants. My name is Yaoyorozu Momo. Yaoyorozu, Midoriya wonders to himself. Could she be related to Isai? I mean, it is a fairly common name. Mina asks, hey, you know Momo already, Midori? I guess you could say we've run into each other, Midoriya quips with a smirk. Momo rewards his comment with a giggle and Midoriya despairs. Oh no, she's cute as well as gorgeous. The rest of the group looks on in confusion, but neither of them elaborate. Well, Midoriya, Mina replies with a saucy wink. I hope we get to know each other too. Midoriya feels the tips of his ears burn as he catches the girl's innuendo, but brushes it off with a simple, friendly, that'd be nice. Ignoring Mina's playful pout, Izuku's attention is drawn to an electric blonde man who pipes up. Hey man, your room looks super rad. This enthusiasm is something Midoriya is equipped to deal with more than pretty girls, thanks to his friendship with Hisashi and Double Tap. Thanks, man, he replies, gesturing to the lightning strike in the man's hair. Your hair looks cool too. Everyone starts poking around his room. Yaoyorozu and Todoroki are perusing his bookshelves. Mina and Kaminari are geeking out over his sword that's hung on the wall, and Izuku, Uraraka, and Shinsu are discussing the entrance exam. They're on the subject of the rescue points when Midoriya hears Kaminari's comment. Hey Mina, what do you think this cool metal sculpture is? I wonder what this button on it does. Dude, it might not be a good idea to press things you don't know anything about, Mina replies apprehensively. Oh come on, Kaminari wheedles, hitting the button. What's the worst that could happen? There's the sound of metal whirring as the robot unfolds itself. Hello, I am a rather thoroughly horrific unrelenting robot, or a Arthur. For short, Arthur says in his usual peppy voice. Would you like to spar? Kaminari screeches. Midoriya, you have a robot to spar with. That's so cool. Command, spar recognized. You have activated the sparring routine. Mode, plus ultra. It's time to go beyond. An arm extends, shooting a sword out directly towards Kaminari's face. Prepare for death. The second he heard the words sparring routine, Midoriya abandons his conversation and leaps across the bedroom, vaulting over the bed and snapping a blow towards Arthur's rapidly extending sword. With a spray of sparks, Arthur's arm shears off at the wrist from the force of Izuku's strike, and the green-haired man slams the button in the center of the robot's chest, pulling him out of sparring mode. Arthur, stand down, Izuku commands, turning to Kaminari once the robot obeys. Are you okay? Did he get you anywhere? The electric blonde is breathing heavily, eyes wide with panic, as he realizes how close of a call that was. Holy shit, he almost killed me. You're lucky I noticed in time, Midoriya tells the other man. I didn't even see you move, Kaminari says, looking at Izuku in awe. That was so quick. I must have inadvertently used some of one for all to jump, Midoriya realizes with a grimace. I'm lucky I didn't destroy the room. How about we do not touch anything else, he says aloud to the rest of the room, all of whom are watching him with wide eyes, and go downstairs. Yeah, that might be a good idea, Uraraka says, shooing everyone out of the room as Midoriya deposits Arthur's severed arm on his bed. As everyone leaves, Todoroki examines the broken appendage, noting the shear lines where the solid steel had crumpled, shrewdly watching Izuku's retreating form. Just how strong is he? There's something about the crisp morning air pumping through his lungs that makes Izuku feel alive during his morning runs. There's something about the burn of his muscles, the blood pounding in his ears to the same rhythm as his feet on the ground, and the cool wind on his face that makes him enjoy running, Izuku thinks as he slows to a stop after his fourth lap of the dorms. There's another thing that I enjoy, the green-haired man thinks, looking off into the distance above the Musatafu skyline. The sun has just begun rising. Vibrant reds and purples are strewn across the brightening sky, stars fading away and being replaced with a deep blue. Yeah, he thinks, that never gets old. Midoriya's appreciation of the sunrise is interrupted by the sound of feet on concrete, and the man turns around to see Ida jogging towards him. Ah, Midoriya, the officious man greets. Good to see you working hard, just as I would expect from someone as dedicated as you. Thanks, Ida, Midoriya says with an easy smile. Good to see you too. The pair go through their cool-down stretches together, before the engine-quirked man broaches conversation again. Midoriya, I've been meaning to commend you for your performance on the entrance exam, he starts, particularly with the rescue points. You realized that there was something more to the exam, and I completely misjudged you. If I had been as perceptive as you, Perhaps I would have scored better. Izuku sighs, straightening up and leveling Ida with a serious look. Then you've missed the point. Huh? I had no idea of the rescue points, Izuku explains. And even if I did, then my actions wouldn't have changed. Then why did you work so hard towards them? I don't understand, Ida asks, the confusion in his eyes hid behind his glasses. Why did you become a hero, Ida? Why does that matter? The man asks. Just humor me, Midoriya implores. I have a legacy to uphold. I come from a long line of heroes who I cannot let down. I want to do what is right. A respectable reason, Midoriya nods in understanding. I'm becoming a hero because I want to save everyone. That is why I stopped so often to rescue people. Midoriya stares at his clenched fist. I cannot pass someone by when I can help them. I see, Ida straightens his glasses. You are truly more noble than I had thought, Midoriya. I have some catching up to do if I want to make my family proud. It takes time, Midoriya claps Ida on the shoulder. And I'm sure that Tensei is proud of you no matter what. Ida chokes on his sip of orange juice. You know my brother. How? Midoriya laughs, sitting down next to Ida, who quickly follows to finish up their stretches. He sometimes comes to the same place I train in. He helped me a lot with learning to control my speed. He's told me a lot about you. I see, Ida comments. Any friend of my brother is a friend of mine. You can call me Tenya, Midoriya. Midoriya stands and extends a hand to help Tenya up. Then it's Izuku to you. Come on, we need to hurry if we're going to clean up and make it to class on time. Izuku, Mina, and Uraraka are walking to class, idly chatting about their predictions and expectations for their first day. A day that is technically just for orientation, and going over the syllabus so is a half day. I hope our teacher is nice, Uraraka is commenting, as they near the classroom before they are distracted by a commotion from the room. Get your feet off the desk. Does your disrespect know no bounds? Ida's righteously indignant shout rings out through the doorway as Mina, Izuku, and Uraraka approach it. What? Did your old school put a stick up your ass? Or were you born with it? Great, Izuku thinks as he hears Bakugo's familiar voice. Of course he had to be in this class. Man, Uraraka quips. Ida is a little uptight, isn't he? It's likely a part of his upbringing, Izuku hedges as Mina chuckles, an exasperated look on his face as he watches the pair's antics. But it is a little extreme, yeah. Mina and Uraraka giggle at the stressed expression on the green-haired man's face. The acid-quirked girl opening her mouth to say something before her coming statement is cut off by the loud bang of the door, slamming open, causing everyone to scurry to their desks. If you're just here to make friends, a commanding voice cuts through the chatter like a strike from Izuku's blade. Then you should leave now. Oh no, Izuku thinks, looking up and meeting the eyes of their teacher in disbelief and horror. I recognize that voice. The tired eyes of Aizawa shout a glare back at him as he strips out of his trademark yellow sleeping bag and addresses the class. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down. That is unacceptable. This is the hero course, and time is a precious resource. Do not waste it. So this looks like fun, huh? Aizawa's voice cuts through the chatter in the aftermath of Bakugo's explosive throw, silencing the class in an instant. You have 3 years to become a hero. His gaze sweeps the class. Do you think it's going to be all games, fun exercises, and playtime? As Izuku looks out over his classmates, the looks on most of their faces tell him that they had expected exactly that, and the green-haired man can't hold back his grimace. Once Izuku had shaken off his initial surprise and the sting of betrayal when he had recognized 𝐲𝗏, he knew instantly that this class would push them to their limits. After all, that's what Bastion and Eraserhead had done for him for the past 3 years. Then you are idiots. Aizawa evidently sees what Midoriya had seen in his classmates, and wastes no time making his opinion known. Let's make things interesting. 𝐲𝗏's lips quirk into the shadow of a grin that has always spelled trouble for Midoriya. Today you will compete in 8 physical tests that will gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last has no potential and will be expelled immediately. The grim light in Aizawa's eyes and the accompanying warning from Usai about expulsions tells Izuku that their teacher is serious. Some of his classmates must have come to the same conclusion because one cries out. But that's not fair. Oh, and you think natural disasters are? Izuku could recite the words of this speech. He's heard it from Aizawa and Bastion often enough. How about power-hungry villains? Memories flash through Midoriya's head as their teacher speaks. The hole in All Might's side. The massive tendril of the sludge villain poised above his head. his mother's grave silhouetted against the sky. What about storms and earthquakes that wipe out whole cities? Aizawa continues, his voice growing shorter and sharper. Disease, disasters, and death are a fact of life. You could hear a pin drop amongst the silent class, the gravity of their teacher's words weighing them down. The world isn't fair, Eraserhead sums up. It's a hero's job to try to combat that unfairness. His severe gaze sweeps the assembled students again, but instead of tamping down their enthusiasm, this time it sparks it ablaze. Show me it's no mistake that you're here, Aizawa challenges. Show me your plus ultra. Midoriya has been shaped, molded, and trained to be many things. A swordsman, a fighter. A leader, a successor. But before he was all that, he was two things. An analyst and a nerd. As he watches his classmates show off their amazing quirks, Midoriya feels like he is in analyst heaven. He knows he should be putting more effort into his tries, but he's so distracted by the innovative uses of his classmates' quirks that he skates by with just 15% of one for all, no energy crackling across his skin. Izuku knows he should be more focused, more competitive, and judging by the disgruntled clamoring of steel in his head, his quirk agrees with the sentiment, but he pushes it down so he can focus on his classmates. Tsuyu has an amazing overall quirk. Her powerful legs and prehensile tongue are amazingly versatile, and her quirk likely has more niche advantages. Ida edges him out by barely a second in the short-distance sprint, and the implications of the engine quirked man's comment about not reaching third gear sends Izuku's head spinning. Mina's acid skate and Aoyama's laser blasts in the same event show ingenuity and imagination that will be handy as a hero. Shinsu brainwashes Uraraka for weightlessness after her turn. It is a clever application of his quirk that doesn't sabotage her event. And judging by Aizawa's approving nod, their teacher has no problem with the purple-haired man's methods. As he watches Bakugo fly with the use of his quirk, Midoriya can't help his grudging appreciation. For all that Katsuki is an asshole, he sure knows how to handle his quirk. One quirk that sticks out more than anyone else's, Midoriya thinks as he pulls one for all into his arm for the grip strength test, reaching a score of 500 kilograms, is Yaoyorozu's. The poised and refined woman is frankly dominating the exercises. While not placing consistently first, that honor going to various classmates whose quirks are specifically suited to specific events. Yaoyorozu has placed high enough in all of the events that Izuku is fairly certain she'll place first overall. Her quirk is just insanely versatile. The ability to create any object she can imagine, as long as she understands the makeup and has the lipids for it, is intimidatingly cool. He is staring at the girl, mind going a mile a minute as he parses the possibilities of her quirk. His handwriting in a phantom notebook with no pen, and a tap on his shoulder draws his attention to a giggling Uraraka and Shinsu who has a long-suffering expression on his face. "You're muttering, motor mouth," Shinsu tells him, and Izuku snaps his mouth shut in response. "Sorry," he apologizes sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's fine, Deku," Uraraka pipes up. "It's just if you keep muttering at Yaoyorozu, though she might notice." A blush bursts onto Midoriya's face as his two friends start laughing. Note to self, Izuku thinks, chuckling as well at his two friends' antics. I need to ask May about a portable version of Roman 6 for note-taking. He is broken out of his musings when Aizawa calls Uraraka to the ball throw. The gravity-quirked girl walks into the circle and examines the ball. Carefully placing her fingertips on the ball, she casually flings it into the air like one would fling a card. The ball floats, drifts, and flies until it's out of sight, high above the clouds. Aizawa holds up his phone where a bold infinity symbol blares, and the class loses their minds. Mina gives Uraraka a high five that threatens to send her into orbit. Midoriya and Shinsu give her a fist bump and an approving smile respectively. A couple more people go, with no one standing out particularly outside of Shoji's 400-meter throw and Ida's kick. But then Yaoyorozu is called to the plate. The girl carries herself with confidence, a facade that only breaks when she turns to ask Aizawa a sheepish question, and then shyly unbuttons her shirt when she receives an affirmative. Midoriya knows that he should look away, for propriety's sake. But then her toned abdomen begins to glow and glimmer, and he finds himself enraptured as metal begins to form above Yaoyorozu's skin, flowing outwards and forming a cannon. A fucking cannon. Izuku is so shocked that he almost misses the way her skin seems tighter on her frame, how her knuckles and ribs seem more prominent than they were a moment before. It's subtle, and anyone not looking closely would have missed it. But he is. Looking closely, that is. Midoriya's muttering about lipid reserves, biological processes, and conservation of mass is interrupted by a massive boom as the cannon goes off. And the creation Quirked Girl's throw is recorded as an astonishing 1042 meters, placing her in second behind Uraraka, and supplanting Bakugo. He gives her an approving grin, and then Izuku is called for his turn. Aizawa returns his impassive look with one just as stony as his friend and teacher tosses him the ball, his expression unreadable. Izuku idly tosses the ball up and down as he steps into the ring, thinking about what percentage he should use. If he remembers his time at the beach correctly, 15% should be enough to send him into second or third place. Satisfied with that, and ignoring the clamoring of his quirk, Izuku pulls 15% of one for all into his upper body and throws the ball, only for it to fall far short of its expected mark, a paltry 82 meters, further than someone with baseline strength could throw, but nowhere near as far as possible with one for all. The familiar background noise of his quirk is silent, and the humming in his core that is Izuku's gifted quirk is absent as well. Recognizing the sudden emptiness, Midoriya turns to see Eraserhead stalking towards him, glaring at him, his hair floating and eyes flared red as he erases Midoriya's quirks. "Where's that power you showed at the entrance exam when you vaporized that 0-pointer? Aizawa is pissed, and with a sinking feeling, Midoriya begins to realize why. Izuku can faintly hear his classmates clamoring behind them, faint exclamations of "vaporized," and "that was him." But he has eyes only for Aizawa. "You've been coasting through these tests," Aizawa condemns, "not giving it your all, something that's disrespectful to both me and your classmates." Midoriya's cheeks tint red with shame. Aizawa is right, he has been coasting. Even after he had promised both Toshinori and his mom that he'd give it his all. The green-haired man bows to his teacher and turns to his classmates in an even deeper bow. "I am sorry," he apologizes, "for not giving it my all. It's not fair to you, all that I've been coasting by while you give your best effort. I was distracted by your amazing quirks, but that is no excuse." His head remains bowed as he waits for his classmate's response, and eventually, Uraraka speaks up. "It's okay, Deku. Just go plus ultra on the rest of the tests to make up for it." There are several murmurs of agreement and a scoff from Katsuki, so Izuku raises his head to look at Aizawa. Eraserhead is staring at him, idly tossing the ball up and down, his blank face not giving away his thoughts. "Yes, do go plus ultra, because if you don't place first in this event, you'll be the one going home." Shinsu and Uraraka speak up, outraged, and Midoriya suppresses a grimace as the rest of the class descends into mutters. "But that's impossible. He can't beat me, I got infinity." "It's all right, guys." Izuku shuts down his friend's interjections before Aizawa can. "I dug myself into this hole with my inaction. It's only right that I get myself out of it." There's grudging appreciation in Aizawa's eyes as he tosses Midoriya the ball, saying, "I'm feeling generous, I'll give you 3 tries. As Midoriya steps back into the ring, he tacks on, "But you've already thrown once, so you've got 2 left." Midoriya simply nods and pulls one for all into his extremities, 30%, as much as he can safely use. Lightning dances over his skin, like a shroud of electricity around his arms and chest as he prepares to throw. He can hear exclamations of surprise from some of his classmates, but he ignores them. Cocking back his arm, Midoriya throws with tremendous force, the pressure kicking up dust and making everyone's hair wave wildly. 1 kilometer, Aizawa's phone reads, as the class chatters in surprise. Katsuki is staring at him, a dumbfounded look upon his normally angry face. "But it's not infinity," Eraserhead says, tossing another ball to Midoriya. "You've got 1 more try." Grimly nodding at Aizawa, Midoriya looks at the ball and considers his options. The most he can safely use is 30%. If he was truly desperate, he could probably push it to 45 or 50%. But whatever limb he used would likely be unusable afterward. "I needed to be creative," he thinks, remembering the others' attempts, the cannon, and Ida's kick. Inspiration strikes, and with a grin, Midoriya turns sideways in the ring and fires up 1 for all, pushing past the 30% limit. He winces in pain as he pours more and more into his limbs. His skin feels like it's bursting as he passes 35%. And there's a bone-deep ache that transforms into shooting pain as he blows through 40% to 45%. Sparks wreath his arms and chest, crackling wildly unlike the controlled energy of his previous throw. The smell of mint permeates the air, accompanied by bitter ozone. Midoriya draws to a halt at 50%, and his bones feel like they would shatter the moment he twitches, muscles rending and skin bursting. So he draws it back a bit to 45%, bottling up the pain as he does. In a quick motion, one that draws shouts of surprise from his watching classmates, Midoriya tosses the ball high into the air, forms his sword in his hands and slams the flat side of the blade into the ball, smacking it into the distance as an impromptu baseball bat. Dust kicks up and obscures him from the class's vision, and the crack of the ball breaking the sound barrier masks the crack of his collarbones breaking, his arms hanging awkwardly. The dust settles slowly, and the silence of the class's shock is broken by Bakugo's angry shout of Deku. As the explosive boy charges him, explosions popping on his palms, Midoriya sees Aizawa's quirk activate, eyes flaring red as he attempts to stop the man's approach. But the dust obscures his vision enough that it doesn't work, and he is too far away to reach him in time. It matters not, because Midoriya dodges Bakugo's explosive bull rush and deftly trips him with an extended leg. The blonde face plants, and the dust settles enough for Aizawa to erase his quirk and wrap him in his capture weapon before he can get up. Attacks against classmates outside of exercises will not be tolerated. His voice bites out, freezing everyone in place. Consider this your one warning, Bakugo. One more time will merit a suspension, and a second one will result in your expulsion. Midoriya can't help but feel surprised at Aizawa's proclamation. He knows that the hero is a fair man, but having a teacher stand up for him is a first. Bakugo calms down after a minute, his red eyes still filled with hate, and Aizawa releases him, the explosive man sulking his way back to the rest of his classmates. Now that is over, Aizawa says, holding up, here is your score. The screen reads 2.8 kilometers, and as Midoriya feels the surprise and pride well up inside, he hears several of his classmates say, "Holy shit." Midoriya quickly realizes, though, that it's nowhere near infinity, and what that means for him. Seeing his dejected look, Aizawa takes pity on him, saying, "That was good enough for me, Midoriya. I will not expel you this time." Midoriya's heart soars and Uraraka and Shinsu cheer before Aizawa cut them off. "But make no mistake, slack off again, and I will expel you on the spot." Midoriya meets Aizawa's eyes, and something like determination and understanding flows between them. "Yes, sensei," Midoriya swears, "I understand." The rest of the tests pass in a haze of pain. The seated toe touch, sit-ups, and distance run tax his injured arms. But he places well in the first two and first in the distance run. Ida's engines burning out before the limitless energy of one for all runs out. Aizawa gathers everyone back up to look at the scores, and to Midoriya's surprise, he places third, below Yaoyorozu and a man named Shoto Todoroki, a name that rings a bell for some reason. What's even more surprising is that he places above Bakugo, knocking the incandescent blonde into 4th place. Uraraka got a respectable 10th place, and to his sorrow, Midoriya notices that Shinsu placed last, just 1 point behind Hagakure, the invisible girl. Turning to his purple-haired man, Midoriya pats him on his shoulder reassuringly as Shinsu grimaces in disappointment. "Oh yeah," Aizawa calls, "I was lying. No one's getting expelled." Shinsu breathes a sigh of relief as Ida sputters out indignation about dishonesty and teachers. "It was a logical ruse," Aizawa exclaims, a manic grin on his tired face. But something connects in Midoriya's mind, a throwaway comment from Usai, as Yaoyorozu says, "Wait, you really believed he would expel someone?" "But he would have, wouldn't he?" Midoriya asks, drawing the attention of the entire class as he addresses Aizawa. "You expelled your entire class last year, didn't you?" Aizawa turns back to them all and simply nods. "Yes, they had no potential, and I expelled them for that. Make of that what you will." The class devolves as realization and mild horror over the fact that their journey to being a hero could have been cut short in a snap washes over them. "Everyone go clean up and change," Aizawa orders, gesturing towards the locker rooms. "And meet back in the classroom so I can give you your syllabus." Sensei," Midoriya calls to Eraserhead's retreating back. "Can I get a pass to the nurse's office?" "Why?" "I kinda broke my collarbones during the ball throw," Izuku says sheepishly, garnering surprised looks from his classmates. "And why didn't you tell me that sooner?" Aizawa asks. "Because I had to finish the tests," Kirishima whispers, so manly, as Aizawa pinches the bridge of his nose, muttering something about problem children. "Here," he says, ripping something off of a notepad he draws from his pocket. "Go see the nurse." "And Midoriya," he calls as Izuku walks away. "Next time, tell me when you're injured." "Yes, sensei." Midoriya rubs his shoulder as he treks back to the classroom. Recovery Girl had healed it handily, but had whacked him on the head for not being more careful. Despite the playful abuse, it had been good to see the older heroine again. Sliding open the classroom door, Midoriya slips into his seat, dropping off one of the juice packs he and 𝐲𝗏 at the teacher's desk as Aizawa finishes passing out the syllabi, and he flashes a reassuring grin at his friends. Read over this before our next class, Aizawa instructs, and be prepared for a quiz. Looking out over his new class of students, he says, go back to the dorms and get some rest. It's a busy day tomorrow. Midoriya, he says, looking at the juice pack, stay behind, I'd like a word. Go ahead guys, Midoriya assures his friends, I'll catch up. As the rest of the classroom empties, leaving just the two men standing across from each other, silence falls. The pair stands impassively, staring each other down when the silence breaks. I'm sorry, I must apologize. They both stop and chuckle as they try to speak at the same time. Midoriya makes to say something, but Aizawa holds his hand up first. I'd like to apologize, he says, glaring Midoriya into silence when he opens his mouth to speak. I acted unprofessionally during your ball throw because I was angry. It was irrational and uncalled for. Aizawa picks up the juice pack and drains it in one go, throwing it away with a quick thanks before he continues. I want you to know that this is not intended to guilt trip you. I just don't know how else to phrase it. When Midoriya nods, he continues. I was disappointed when I saw your quirk evolution during the entrance exam. I was disappointed and angry that you hadn't told me earlier. Midoriya winces as Aizawa continues. It was an irrational reaction, but a human one. I had thought that we were closer than that. 𝐲𝗏, Midoriya says with a pained expression. You are one of my closest friends. You're like a brother to me. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, it's just that I was so busy training this new part of my quirk. Midoriya feels bad about lying about one for all, but he has no choice. I forgot to tell you and 𝐸𝐸 about my newfound strength. I made a mistake, Izuku bows his head. I'm sorry. It's okay, kid, Aizawa sighs. I'm not angry anymore. Aizawa grunts in surprise as Izuku collides into a quick hug, the pair patting each other on the back before they separate. And it's Aizawa or Eraserhead in school, kid, not 𝐲𝗏. Sorry, Aizawa, Izuku says with a sheepish grin, grabbing his bag and heading towards the door. Midoriya, Aizawa calls, and Izuku stills with his hand on the doorknob. You said you were training. Who was training you? Midoriya weighs his options before settling on the answer he had given Baston. He is a retired hero. His name is Toshinori. Aizawa nods, his expression inscrutable, and Midoriya leaves only to run into Ida, Uraraka, and Shinsu waiting for him. Guys, you didn't have to wait up for me, Izuku says with an easy grin as they walk back to the dorm. 𝐲𝗏 watches the door slide shut behind the young man he has been mentoring for nearly 4 years and waits a moment to gather his thoughts and let his students move away. Standing up abruptly, he stalks towards the teacher's lounge, drawing open the door and stepping inside with its one occupant. Ah, Aizawa, they say. How was your first day? I know for a fact that you were watching the quirk apprehension test, Eraserhead says to the hero. So don't play dumb. Yagi Toshinori, All Might, Aizawa says to the skeleton of a man in an oversized suit. It's time we had a talk. Midoriya rubs his shoulder uncomfortably as he steps out of the shower attached to his room, drying off his hair. Recovery Girl had healed it, but said that it would be sore for a couple of days. He thinks back to the events of the day and can't help but feel ashamed at his actions, how he had coasted by in the exercise. I have to be better, he says out loud, stepping out into the room with his towel around his shoulders. Give it my all. A figure is sitting on his bed, and Izuku realizes that whoever it is seeing him completely naked, as his towel is currently covering nothing. Hey, they pipe up. So I was thinking about making some additions to your hero suit. Midoriya blinks in surprise as he sees that the pink shape on his bed is 𝐻𝗔, and several realizations hit him quickly as he shouts, Maon naked. Yes, Izuku, I can see. You have a very nice penis. 𝐻𝗔 says blithely as a slight blush decorates her cheeks that Midoriya is too busy diving for his clothes to notice. Anyways, about that upgrade for your suit. Midoriya throws on the first pair of clothes he can find, a tight t-shirt, and a pair of booty shorts that say green bean on them. A joke gift from Double Tap. He turns to his friend and asks, 𝐻𝗔, how did you get in here? The door was locked. Oh, I picked the lock, 𝐻𝗔 says easily like it was no big deal. Midoriya blinks in surprise. How? It's an electric lock. Actually, never mind, I don't want to know. Good, 𝐻𝗔 smiles brightly. Roman 6, pull up those schematics. Here's what I was thinking, Zuko. Midoriya isn't sure when he falls asleep, but he wakes up around 3 a.m. upside down, his heels on the bed and his hair brushing the floor. A snore catches his attention, and he sees 𝐻𝐡𝐚 passed out on his desk chair, neck craned at an uncomfortable position and pink hair in her eyes. With a tired groan, he heaves himself up and trudges over to her, shaking her shoulder lightly. Come on, May, you've got to lay down. Don't want to move, she grumbles, not opening her eyes, her words slurred with exhaustion. I'm tired. Midoriya takes a closer look at his friend, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and stained overall, and realizes that she probably hasn't been sleeping well. You can stay here, he says, but we need to get those overalls off. I don't want grease on my bed. In a move that seems impossible for one basically asleep, May strips off the overalls, leaving her in a tank top and a pair of Darth Vader boxers. Midoriya blushes slightly, but entreats, come on, get up. No, 𝐻𝐡𝐚 mumbles, carry me. A faint smile on his face from his friend's antics. Midoriya wraps his arms around her waist and hoists her over his shoulder, marching towards the bed. He tries to lay her down gently, but her surprisingly strong arms refuse to unwrap from his shoulders, and they tumble into his bed together. May, let go, he mumbles. I'm gonna sleep in the chair. Don't wanna, she replies, drifting off to sleep. I'm comfy. Pressed up against his mattress, face smushed against the pillow and 𝐻𝐡𝐚's arm around him, Midoriya can't help but agree. Ida can't help but think it's odd, on his morning run, that he hasn't seen Midoriya yet. The green-haired man said that he runs every morning, but Ada ran the same route as the two of them had yesterday and didn't see him. The engine-quirked man sees Kirishima coming from the opposite direction and waves him down. Hey Ida, he calls in response, slowing to a stop. What's up, man? Have you seen Midoriya this morning? He said he was going to run as well. Nah, I haven't, Kirishima says with a shrug. He's probably sleeping in there, right? I hear that recovery girl's quirk really takes it out of you. You might be right, Ida agrees as they walk towards the dorm. But I should probably go wake him up. I heard we're doing hero training today, and we shouldn't be late. I'll go with you, Kirishima says as they go past the kitchen to the elevator. Hey guys, Mina calls, slipping inside. Going up? Yeah, we're going to go wake up Midoriya, Kirishima explains. Oh cool, I need to get something from my room, but I'll come with ya. The elevator makes it to Midoriya's floor, and the trio exits to see Shinsu locking his own door. Hey, Shinsu, Kirishima greets, slugging him in the shoulder. Seeing Midoriya? No, Shinsu says with a pained look, rubbing his shoulder where Kirishima hit him. But he should be in his room, why don't you knock? Midoriya blearily raises his head from his pillow as knocking sounds from his door. Carefully extracting himself from 𝐻𝐡𝐚's octopus-like embrace, he trudges to his door, running his hand through his messy hair and opening it. Hey guys, he says, punctuated by a yawn as he sees Ida, Mina, Kirishima, and Shinsu. What's up? The quartet is staring at him, various levels of blush on their faces, and Midoriya doesn't realize why until he looks down at himself. He is still wearing the incredibly short, green bean booty shorts and a shirt that might as well be a crop top. Ooh, he says, at a loss for words. It's not what it looks like. And, Mina says between giggles, Kirishima and Shinsu cracking up beside her. What does it look like, Midoriya? Izuku stutters through several words, not managing to get any out. Midoriya, Ida says, getting a hold of himself and pushing his glasses back up his nose. What on earth are you wearing? Whatever answer he has is interrupted by a call from inside his room. Zuko, who is it? All four of their heads snap towards his room and back towards Midoriya. Is there someone in there? Yeah, Midoriya says. This is my friend 𝐻𝐡𝐚. The girl in question stumbles towards the door, pulling her overalls back on as she greets. Hi, I'm 𝐻𝐡𝐚, inventor extraordinaire. Were you there all night, 𝐻𝐡𝐚? Mina asks with a sly grin. Yep, she exclaims. Me and Izuku were up all night making babies. Kirishima and Mina lose it. And Ida looks like his processor just crashed as her words and Midoriya's state of dress draw them to the wrong conclusions. Is that even allowed? Kirishima asks after he has stopped laughing. Ida stops sputtering and recites the rules like a robot. The U.A. Handbook of Student Conduct states that interpersonal relationships are allowed as long as there are no permanent outcomes to them, he says, obviously flustered. And what's that in English, Robocop? The snark in Shinsu's voice is palpable as Ida proclaims his objections to the nickname. Intercourse is allowed as long as it doesn't result in an offspring, Ida clarifies. You can fuck, Mina simplifies even further, a salacious smirk on her face. As long as you don't knock someone up. It's Izuku's turn to sputter incoherently, a blush turning his face tomato red and traveling down his chest. There is no fucking happening. Me and Mei are just friends. No one sees Hatsume's small pout at his declaration, because Mina comments slyly, friend with benefits? That's an odd question, Midoriya thinks obliviously as Shinsu and Kirishima chuckle. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of benefits to being Mei's friend, he says with a shrug. Kirishima, Shinsu, and Ida stare at him in shock. You down for one more? Mina asks with a playful wink. That's an even odder question, Midoriya thinks. I'm always down for more friends. Yeah, sure, he replies, watching in confusion as Ashido blinks in surprise, a faint dusting of lilac on her cheeks as she scampers away. Ida follows after her, muttering something about hooligans and indecency as he follows. Was it something I said? Midoriya asks Shinsu, his face screwed up in confusion at his pink friend's strange actions. The purple-haired man simply shakes his head and pats Izuku on the shoulder consolingly. Never change, Midoriya, he laughs. Never change. I am coming through the door like a normal person. As the class loses their collective minds over the number one hero's entrance, Midoriya is one of the few who keeps their cool. His exposure to All Might has numbed him to the awe that his fellows are experiencing. Toshinori's training has left Midoriya more at ease in the shadow of All Might's brilliance. But his classmates are receiving the full force, clad in the hero's iconic Silver Age costume, right in the face. Todoroki is also calm. Midoriya thinks it is because of his father, but stops his knee-jerk reaction of comparing the son to Endeavor. He might hate the hero, but he won't take out the sins of the father on the Todoroki. He'll wait and make his own judgment. Some part of Midoriya can't help but snort in amusement as he watches the tail end of his mentor's flamboyant entrance. Aizawa's mini rants about the hero are correct. He is a drama queen. Still, seeing his Silver Age costume is pretty damn awesome, Midoriya thinks. He is broken out of his amusement when Toshinori presents a card reading. Battle to the class. Today's lesson will pull no punches. The class flies into exclamations and mutters as All Might poses dramatically, all flexing muscles and red spandex. Midoriya can practically feel the intense excitement radiating off of Bakugo in the desk in front of him. And judging by the worried glances Yaoyorozu and Shoji are shooting the blonde man, he's not the only one. But Midoriya honestly doesn't care right now. He's practically vibrating in excitement. This is it. This is his chance to put all of his training and preparation to work in a formal hero school environment. His quirk is clamoring in his head, the rhythmic excitement of ringing steel echoing his mood. One of the keys of being a hero, All Might declares, pressing a button next to Aizawa's desk, is looking good. 20 slots slide out of the wall, large metal cases inside of them. Each case is labeled with a number 120, and number 18 is conspicuously missing. 18 just so happens to be Midoriya's seat number, and judging by the questioning looks on Uraraka and Ida's faces, his friends have noticed as well. Young Midoriya, All Might's voice catches the attention of the class. I'm told there were some last-minute modifications to your suit, and that a support student would be along shortly. Midoriya realizes, that'd be Hatsume. As if beckoned by the thought of her, like some eldritch demon, the door to the classroom slams open, and Hatsume blows through it. Stomping up to Midoriya, painful bags under her eyes, she slams the case into his chest. Here, have fun, Zuko. I'm going to go take a nap. And just as quickly as she entered the room, Hatsume stomps out of it. The class collectively shares a look of bewilderment as the door slams shut, and Ida says, well, that was interesting. You. The door slams back open, and everyone jumps in surprise as Mei sticks her head in. Hatsume is pointing at All Might, glaring down the pro. Get me footage of our baby's performance, or else. Yes, All Might agrees on instinct, confused at what sounded vaguely like a threat from a grease-covered gremlin, and shrugs awkwardly. I'll do that. The door shuts again, and the classroom is silent as everyone processes the entire odd interaction. Wait, baby. Midoriya is sitting on the locker room bench, staring at the case containing his suit. He has stripped off his clothes and garnered a couple of wolf whistles from Kirishima and Kaminari, and an angry glare from Bakugo, but he pays them no mind. Midoriya sits stock still, apprehension settling heavily on his shoulders. He trusts Hatsume. He truly does. But as the other men file out of the locker room, Midoriya can't help but think of all the times his best friend has gotten a tad enthusiastic. A certain stab-happy robot comes to mind. He can't help but shudder at the possible unauthorized changes she could have made to his suit. So he's sitting here, in his boxers, staring at a box. Midoriya, you must get dressed or we will be late. Ida's normal hand chops are punctuated by metal clanging and ceramic clacking. Midoriya turns and sees his friend half stuffed into a suit of armor, not unlike his own when he forms it, but more angular. I'll be right out, 𝐀𝐦, Midoriya waves off. Don't wait up for me. Taking a deep breath, Izuku opens the case to the side of forest green. Midoriya's red steel-toed boots echo down the tunnel to the training ground. His baggy green cargo pants, made of a Kevlar and Nomex weave, are tucked into the footwear modeled off of his favorite pair of sneakers. He's shrugging on his green armored jacket as he steps out into the light, and All Might's voice rings out through the mock city. They say the clothes make the pros, ladies and gentlemen, and behold, their teacher gestures proudly to them. You are the proof. Midoriya's gaze sweeps over his striking and colorful classmates, their costumes sticking out. Bakugo has comically large grenade gauntlets hanging from his forearms, and despite how ornamental they look, Midoriya knows that his former bully would never do something just for show, so they must have a purpose. Ida is secluded under a formidable set of armor, and Aoyama's glittery suit is almost painfully eye-catching, but the hero suits of the remaining men are downright tame in comparison. They're mostly tight-fitting leotards and cool jackets, although Kirishima is bare-chested, and Shinsu has an odd mechanical device hanging around his neck. The women of the class, however, are another story entirely. Tsuyu and Jiro are in reasonable outfits, a close-fitting yet theme-appropriate wetsuit for the frog-quirked girl, and a stylish, punk-ish outfit for Jiro. Uraraka's suit is space-themed, with thick boots and wristbands that likely help with her quirk, as well as a helmet with a tinted visor. The fabric of her costume is plastered incredibly close to her body, but not so tight that she can't move in it. Midoriya suppresses a blush at his friend's figure, and very pointedly keeps his eyes at head level, as he returns her wave of greeting. Mina is wearing an equally form-fitting leotard tucked into clunky boots, with tufts of fur on her shoulders. Functionally, it's very similar to Uraraka's, but the colors couldn't be more different. The acid-quirked girl is covered in purple and turquoise laid out in a camouflage pattern. It's slightly gaudy, yet it also suits her as well, and somehow manages to complement her pink skin. It's very her. Mina catches Midoriya looking her over and shoots him a flirty wink, making Izuku jerk his head to the side to avoid looking inappropriately. His gaze lands squarely on Yaoyorozu, and Midoriya promptly blushes hard enough to resemble a tomato. It would be more accurate to describe what she isn't wearing, rather than what she is. But if Midoriya lingers on that smooth skin, he'll probably combust. Red fabric covers her shoulders and her waist, flowing down her side where it fades into a short yellow skirt, held up by a belt that has a tablet secured to the back. Her back is mostly bare, as are her entire legs, and the amount of cleavage ranging from Yaoyorozu's sharp collarbones to her navel is enough to give Midoriya a heart attack. Midoriya's blush grows stronger as his eyes skip between the three women, and he can't help but curse his good bad luck. Why is everyone so hot? Now, All Might's next declaration saves Midoriya from his torment. Shall we get started, you bunch of newbies? The class's return cheer echoes through the empty city. All right, here's the situation. Midoriya double takes as Toshinori pulls out a set of note cards from his suit, reading from them like a script. You will be randomly split into 4 teams with 2 of the teams going against each other at a time. 1 team will be the villain team and 1 will be the heroes. That's like 5 people a team, Kirishima says, confusion lacing his voice. Don't most heroes work alone or in pairs? That has only been in recent years, All Might clarifies. Before my debut, hero teams were more widespread. His piercing blue gaze sweeps the class, pinning them down with their weight. I will not be around forever. While I'm not planning on retiring for several years, eventually the deterrent against villainy that I am will be gone. It will be up to you all to pick up the slack. Sometimes that means teaming up to take down criminals you wouldn't be able to take alone. Midoriya can see the shock and worry showing on his classmates' faces. They hadn't had the time to process All Might's future retirement like he had. And while it hopefully wouldn't come quickly, a world without All Might is one they've never known. All Might gives them no time to process his groundbreaking announcement, barreling on through his explanation. With that in mind, Nezu has decided to focus more on teamwork this year, and it has been planned into your curriculum. The hero nods encouragingly as understanding hits the class. The villains will be protecting an objective and the heroes trying to obtain it. All Might restarts his explanation of the exercise. The villains will have 5 minutes to prepare before the heroes can enter the building, and the heroes have 10 minutes to find them. Are there any questions? How do we win? Can we be violent? Isn't this a little advanced for beginners? Will we be expelled like yesterday? Isn't my cape magnificent? Everyone turns incredulously to Aoyama's off-topic question, and Mrs. All Might's panicked look at the onslaught of questions. Well, in order, All Might tugs on the collar of his suit. The heroes win by obtaining the bomb, capturing the villains, and completing a mystery second objective. The villains win if the heroes fail in any one of those, or if they can capture the heroes. Kaminari pipes up. Isn't that a little unfair to the heroes? Life isn't fair, and a hero's life especially so. All Might echoes Aizawa's words from the day before. You will rarely come into a situation in the field where you have the upper hand. The villains will always have a head start or know more than you. And the heroes always have more to lose. If you are to be the next generation of heroes, you must be ready to rise past these obstacles and go plus ultra. Dropping his clenched fist from where he had raised it dramatically, All Might moves down the list of questions. To answer your question, Bakugo, you can be aggressive, but causing any major injuries will be punished severely. Aside from that, I encourage you all to go all out. Midoriya winces at the savage grin on Bakugo's face as their teacher continues. Basui, we are throwing you kids off the deep end to teach you how to swim. Our exercises will only get more complex from here. You, will be the most difficult years of your lives. But if you make it through, it will be worth it. I will not expel anyone, and your cape is very bright. Now, All Might shouts over Aoyama's preening, pointing at the lottery box on a stand behind him. Let's draw. Names begin appearing on the board as All Might draws them from the box, listing from Team 1 to Team 4. Team 1. Bakugo Katsuki, Hagakure Toru, Ida Tenya, Todoroki Shoto, and Sato Rikido. Team 2. Aoyama Yuga, Ashido Mina, Kaminari Denki, Zero Hanta, and Koda Koji. Team 3. Midoriya Izuku, Yaoyorozu Momo, Shinsu Hitoshi, Uraraka Ochako, and Kirishima Ijiro. Team 4. Shoji Mizo, Jiru Kyoka, Ajiro Mashirao, Asui Tsuyu, and Takoyami Fumikage. Midoriya gravitates towards the other members of his team as All Might finishes up. He gives Kirishima and Yaoyorozu a friendly nod and Shinsu and Uraraka a fist bump in greeting as All Might places 4 new slips into the lottery box. The hero draws the slips out and announces the rounds and theory. Team 2 will be the villains going against the Team 4 heroes in the second round, and Team 1 will be the villains going against the Team 3 heroes in the first round. Kirishima hisses beside him as he rereads their opponent list. It looks like we're going to be up against some heavy hitters. They might be heavy hitters, Midoriya reassures Kirishima, locking eyes with Bakugo as the crashes of battle echo through his head. But so are we. All Might leads them to the outside of an empty building and gives them several earpieces to distribute amongst themselves. We will be able to hear everything in the control booth, and if anything goes too far, I will shut this exercise down. Do you understand? They chorus their assent, and All Might nods, handing them a map. Good. Here is the layout of the building. I will brief the other team. You will be allowed to enter the building 5 minutes after my call. The pro hero jets off, and Kirishima turns to Midoriya. Hey, Midoriya, man, he asks, scratching his spiky hair. It's a cool design and all, but isn't your costume a little plain? Kirishima, Midoriya deadpans. Your suit is literally just some shirtless sleeves and joggers. Okay, for the record, rude. Kirishima grins as Shinsu snorts and the girls chuckle. But you know what I mean. Midoriya does know what he means. The pale green color of his suit isn't particularly eye-catching. The lines that mimic All Might's Silver Age suit drawn tight across his chest, as well as some on his ribs, are the only thing that differentiates it from any other jumpsuit. His dark green combat pants are tucked into his red boots, laced up tight around his calves. His red boots and a brushed steel circlet, and utility belt with a knife on it, are the only things that stand out aside from his fairly impressive physique. The circlet is reminiscent of one from the Lord of the Rings movies, crossed with a futuristic design that is particularly eye-catching. It sits low on his brow, arcing back around his ears and meeting at the back of Midoriya's head. Midoriya shrugs. This is just an undershirt of a sort. Ignoring Kirishima's confused glance, Midoriya turns to the rest of the team. Why don't we go over everyone's quirks so we all know what we can do? They take turns explaining each other's quirks. Midoriya had known Uraraka and Shinsu's, and he had a good idea of what Yaoyorozu's is, although the information about lipids is new. Learning about Kirishima's hardening quirk was interesting, but it's Izuku's turn to explain now. My quirk is called Green Knight. I have a mastery of swords, and I'm also able to form oral armor on myself. The smell of mint sweeps over the area as Izuku forms a glowing green gauntlet on his arm. I can focus the energy from my armor into energy that gives me strength and speed. Looking at the armor, Kirishima mutters, undershirt. I get it now. The smell of mint is suffused with the sharp tang of ozone as the gauntlet fades away and energy crackles over Midoriya's arm. But if I use too much energy, it injures me. Where does the energy come from? Is there a dietary or a rest requirement, or do you gain it from a source? Is it naturally recharging, or is it a deliberate act? Yaoyorozu blushes as everyone's attention is directed at her after the slew of questions. Sorry, I just got overexcited. It's okay, Midoriya smiles easily. We should probably focus on the exercise now, but I'll answer your questions later. I'll hold you to it, Yaoyorozu agrees. All right, Midoriya claps his hands together. Do you think you can make another communicator like ours and lock it to the transmitting function, not the receiving one? I can. She draws her tablet from its slot on her belt, typing in a search for schematics. I just need the frequency. Try this. Midoriya tosses her his earpiece, showing her the frequency information on the inside of it. Got it. The tall girl's arm sparkles, and an earpiece pops out. Momo hands it to Midoriya, who immediately passes it to Uraraka. Can you float yourself and see where they are and put this on the windowsill where they have the bomb? Uraraka nods. Got it. Wait a minute, Kirishima interrupts. All Might said we couldn't do anything till the 5 minutes is up. No, he said we couldn't enter the building, Midoriya corrects. And Uraraka will be on the outside, Shinu adds. My uncle always says that sometimes we have to bend the rules to win, Momo tacks on, earning a surprised glance Midoriya. Okay, I get it, Kirishima grumbles. Just doesn't seem very manly, that's all. Winning is manly, Midoriya reassures him as Uraraka begins floating up past the windows, peering in them carefully without being seen. This will help us win. I got them. Uraraka's voice rings through their earpieces. The 5th floor. I can see everyone but Hagakure. Can you tell me what they're doing? Midoriya asks. Ida and Todoroki appear to be arguing. Sato is mixing something in a pouch and Bakugo is doing push-ups for some reason. Ida and Todoroki arguing makes sense, Midoriya thinks. They both come from hero families and have strong personalities. Sato is probably preparing sugar for his quirk, and Bakugo is acting strange, but there must be a reason for it. You don't see Hagakure at all, Midoriya clarifies. No, Uraraka replies, but her gloves are piled by the door. She is likely scouting the building, Yaoyorozu guesses. That is what I'd do. You're right, Midoriya nods. Uraraka, leave the transmitter and come down. We need to plan. Deku, there's something else. The floating girl's voice is calm but edged with anxiety. I've figured out the mystery objective. They've got hostages. Fuck. Okay. Midoriya presses a hidden button on his circlet, and it folds down around his temples and framing his jaw. Roman 6. Can you monitor the transmitter and tell me if they say anything interesting? You got it, boss. His 4 teammates look at him in confusion as Vi's peppy voice rings out. Midoriya, who was that? Shinsu asks. That was Roman 6, Midoriya explains. A virtual intelligence my best friend made to help with hero work. So cool, Uraraka whispers. All right, we don't have a lot of time. Midoriya peers at each one of his classmates' faces as they huddle around him. I've got about 60% of a plan. I'm hoping you can help me fill in the rest. Hero team, you may enter the building. All Might's voice sounds over their comms as the quintet rushes forward. They're almost to the door when Midoriya hears the crackling rush of forming ice and Roman 6 shouts. Boss. Midoriya powers 30% of one for all into his arm and drives forward, lunging through the rapidly forming iceberg and clearing a path for his teammates. The crack of shattering ice is eclipsed by the even louder crack of a glacier forming around the building. Panting, the team inside examines the glossy ice coating every surface. Good job, Shinsu remarks to Midoriya, rapping on the meter-thick ice on the door. Any later, and we would have been trapped outside. Let's move then, Midoriya nods. If he tries that again, we might be in trouble. The team jogs down the hall as quickly as they can on the slippery ice. The boys' steel soles give them more purchase on the ice than the girls' shoes, but it is still slow going. They're nearing the 3rd floor when Midoriya's headset beeps privately, and Roman 6 speaks to him in his earpiece. "Boss, do you want to activate thermal vision? The other team has an invisible member, right? You can do that." Midoriya's mutter is practically inaudible, but the circlet's sensitive microphone picks it up. "Yeah, boss, I've got night vision, thermal vision, and I can overlay maps and routes to your eyepiece," Roman 6 explains. "There's an eyepiece?" Midoriya wonders. "I've got to read the manual for this thing." "Do it," he confirms. A small visor slots down over Midoriya's left eye. It's tinted green and doesn't obscure his vision. The scene in the eyepiece is overwhelmingly blue, the ice making everything cold as, well, ice. The team continues down the corridor, moving more slowly now as to not give away their position. As they move onto the 4th floor, a splash of red appears in Midoriya's eyepiece. Freezing, and confirming that he doesn't see anything in his non-visored eye, Midoriya sidles up to Yaoyorozu, the girl shivering in her revealing suit. "Do you have that capture tape All Might gave us?" he asks, watching the red blur creep closer out of the corner of his eye. "Of course," Yaoyorozu says, bewildered. "Why?" "You might need to use it in a second," Midoriya says, surreptitiously drawing his still-sheathed dagger from his side. The red blur lunges toward him, and a roll of capture tape appears from thin air, aimed to wrap around Midoriya's arms. Just as quickly, with 15% of one for all humming unseen beneath his skin, Midoriya presses a button on his dagger's sheath and slams it into the stomach of the attacker. Electricity arcs across the sheath and 𝐜𝐻𝐸 convulses as the hybrid taser knife knocks her off her feet. Capture tape clatters across the ice, and the invisible girl slumps to the ground unconscious, frost ringing her like a crater. "Holy shit," Kirishima exclaims. "That was so quick." "I got lucky," Midoriya says, checking the unconscious girl's pulse and propping her into a sitting position against the wall. "If Roman 6 hadn't warned me, I never would have seen her." All Might calls. 𝐜𝐻𝐸 has been eliminated, and Izuku turns to Yaoyorozu. "Can you create a thick woolen blanket?" Her suit seems really thin, and she is already shivering. "I don't want to leave her like this." Momo nods, and the blanket extrudes from her back. Uraraka and Yaoyorozu wrap it around the invisible girl, ensuring she is safe, and the team continues on their way. They reach the hallway that leads to the room the heroes have holed up in just as All Might calls the 5-minute warning. "All right," Midoriya says as Yaoyorozu and Shinsu split off. "You know the plan. We've got this. Good luck." Roman 6. "Give me the layout." Bakugo and Todoroki are standing in the middle of the room, next to the bomb. Ida is on the left side with 5 robot hostages, and Sato is on the right side of the room. "You got all that?" Midoriya asks through his earpiece, his teammates all responding with affirmative. "We're ready whenever you are," Midoriya radios to Yaoyorozu and Shinsu. "The door explosives will be prepped in about 30 seconds, the creation quirked woman replies. "Good, we move on Shinsu's cue." Nodding to Uraraka, Midoriya watches as the gravity girl presses 5 fingers against herself and Kirishima. She draws the spiky man into an embrace, and Midoriya picks the pair of them up. Across the comms and through the door, Midoriya hears a knock, and a voice that is certainly not Shinsu's calls out. "Hey, I have a delivery for Icy Hot and King Explosion Murder. Are they here?" Explosions sound as Bakugo stomps to the back door. "How do you know that name, you piece of she?" "Gotcha." Shinsu stops using the voice masker, his smug tone bleeding through. "Knock yourself out, fucknuts." A dull thud is heard as Bakugo slams his head into the floor, knocking himself out, and Todoroki's cry of "no" is eclipsed by the sound of Yaoyorozu's breaching charge blowing the back door off its hinges. Simultaneously, Midoriya pulses one for all into his legs and kicks the door down. It crashes through a barrier of ice and slams into the back wall. Midoriya leans back, pitches the combined weightless pair of Uraraka and Kirishima towards Ida and the hostages, and lunges into the room. The two uncouple and Kirishima lands hard in front of the hostages as Uraraka deactivates her quirk. The woman lunges for Ida and grapples with the armored man. At the back door, Yaoyorozu swings around and brings a taser to bear on Todoroki, who is still stunned from the door crashing through his ice. The dual-quirked man's eyes widen as the prongs aimed in his chest and 50,000 volts go coursing through him. Todoroki slumps to the ground as Shinsu and Momo move to secure him. Midoriya catches this out of the corner of his eye, as most of his attention is focused on Sato. The tall man downs a packet of sugary material, and his muscles swell and bulge. 𝐻𝐡𝐢𝐬 roars and charges Midoriya. And the green-haired man dances out of the way, a savage grin on his face to match the crashing of swords in his head. Lightning crackles along his arms and sword as Izuku darts around, narrowly escaping Sato's strong haymakers and striking back with his fists and the flat of his sword. The bigger man is strong, nearly as strong as Midoriya, but the effects on his mental state are obvious. Sato must have taken an absurdly large amount of sugar with the way he rages dumbly, blasting through concrete pillars like they're nothing, sending shrapnel everywhere. Midoriya fights quicker and smarter, and after a minute Sato is unconscious on the ground, a bruise swelling on his skull. "Is that it?" Kirishima calls. "Are we done?" Midoriya looks around the room, taking in the unconscious forms of Bakugo and Todoroki, and Ida floating like a balloon trussed with capture tape on the ceiling. Kirishima is still standing in front of the hostage robots, their screens still flashing green to indicate full health, with rubble at his feet from where he shielded them. "Yeah, that's it," Midoriya nods, walking up to the bomb and placing a hand on it, a smile gracing his face. "Good job, guys." Bakugo stirs quietly, stumbling to his feet and clutching his head. "What the fuck happened?" he growls internally. "I was shouting at someone and then mind freak. That fucker brainwashed me." His vision clears, and he sees Icy Hot and Lips unconscious on the ground, and Deku's fucking team clustered around the hostages. Fucking Deku. Always pretending he was better than Bakugo, always looking down on him. Fucking Deku, who hid his quirk to get one up on Katsuki and make him look like an idiot. Not this time. Bakugo looks down at his gauntlet. The grenade shape is heavy with the sweat he built up before the exercise and looks undamaged. Grimacing through his pounding headache, Bakugo levels it at Midoriya, meets his former friend's eyes, and quietly growls, "Deku, take this," as he pulls the pin. "Look." Izuku hears Bakugo's growl at the same time. He hears the shout of his instincts and time freezes. It's a sound he is familiar with from years of cohabitation. Pure, unbridled rage. Midoriya's quirk screams at him as he meets the explosive blonde's eyes. He activates One for All on instinct, 100% flowing through his body like a live wire connected to the universe. Time crawls forward. Sparks fly as Bakugo pulls the pin on his grenade gauntlet. His muscles ripple with the recoil as flame blooms. Midoriya knows that if he as much as twitches, the full force of One for All will shatter him into a million pieces. He sees Shinsu's eyes widen, the blast reflected in the glassy surface of his contracting pupils. Izuku takes stock, mind racing a mile a minute. His entire reaction caught between a heartbeat. Thump thump. The blast is thrumming with potential. The explosive shockwave is already sending ripples through the air. Midoriya knows that if it hits, it will do incredible damage. All the explosive sweat from Bakugo's overactive glands and 10 minutes of push-ups culminate in a massive explosion. Kirishima and Midoriya might survive unscathed if they can get their armor and hardening up, but the other three have no defense. The best-case scenario is severe injuries, if the blast reaches them fully spread out. Izuku doesn't want to think about the worst case. Thump thump. Midoriya can't let the blast reach them. His only way out is forward. One for All bleeds off him rapidly, energy crackling off the floor and roof around him as Izuku drops the percentage and time speeds back up. Midoriya's armor forms around him. He forgoes his sword and makes the thickest shield he can as his circlet snaps down into a mouthguard. The explosion rockets forward at the same time Izuku does. One for All humming over his skin as he meets it head-on, shield first. Thump thump. The blast shakes the building, the smell of ash warring with the smell of mint as fire rolls around the team just barely close enough to not burn them. The ground rumbles beneath their feet as rubble falls from the ceiling. The smoke clears and Midoriya and Bakugo come into view. The blonde's arm is hanging limply. The recoil from the stored-up blast had ripped his arm out of its socket, and it looks severely dislocated. Midoriya is standing across from him. His shining green armor is undamaged, except for streaks of ash marring its transparent surface. His cracked shield is held in front of him, where it took the brunt of the blast. With a curt move, Izuku dissolves the shield, but not the armor. Glancing back to make sure everyone is okay, he sees the collapsed floor in an inverse cone spreading out from his position. Ash and smoke coating the walls and ceiling. He stalks towards Bakugo, stony-faced and menacing. Izuku grabs Bakugo by the high collar of his suit and hoists him up till they are face to face. Bakugo's hands scrabble at his armor and crackle with ineffective explosions. The blonde tries to bring his other grenade gauntlet up to bear, but Midoriya's hand catches it, crackling with energy. Before 𝗵𝘃𝐸 can set it off, Izuku crushes the gauntlet beneath his fist, metal and ceramic crumbling to the ground in front of 𝗵𝘃𝐸's shocked eyes. "I thought I warned you, 𝗵𝘃𝐸," Izuku growls, his head pounding and ears ringing with crashing steel as his instincts cry out for retribution. "Everything has changed, and you're getting left behind." "Fuck you," Katsuki spits. "Fine then," Midoriya nods. "Be that way." Izuku slams his head forward into 𝗵𝘃𝐸's, and his helmeted forehead knocks the other man unconscious, sending him limp in Midoriya's grasp. Midoriya lets go of him, and he slumps unceremoniously to the ground, letting his armor fade and striding towards his teammates and a trussed-up Iida, all of whom are watching with wide eyes. Izuku smiles sadly and asks, "Is everyone okay?" All Might calls them back to the monitor room. The heroes' faces grim as they load 𝗵𝘃𝐸 and Sato onto medical carts to be sent off to the nurse's office. Iida and Hagakure were fine, and Todoroki had waved off medical assistance once he woke up. There was something in his eyes as he met Midoriya's. Midoriya thought it was rage like his father's. But as the heterochromatic man melts the ice around the building, Izuku thinks it's more like torment. "I'd like us to review the footage as a class," All Might says as they gather in front of a massive screen, "to go over what was done right and wrong, and to let the teams view their battle trial from a different perspective." The hero hits the button as Midoriya and the class watch as the events pan out just like before. He watches himself present his plan. He watches Yaoyorozu add on to his plan and work out the kinks. He watches them burst through the ice barriers and proceed through the building. He watches himself grapple with air and neutralize Hagakure. He watches as they split up and Yaoyorozu creates literal explosives to take down their door. He watches them take down the other team quickly and efficiently. He watches as they turn their backs, 𝗵𝘃𝐸 stands up, and the cameras cut to static. The camera cuts back into a scene of destruction emanating from around Midoriya, and he watches himself knock 𝗵𝘃𝐸 out. "Now," All Might asks the silent class, "who can tell me what the villain team did right and wrong?" Asui raises her hand and says, "Todoroki sealed the building, which was good. But he also sealed them in the room, isolating them from Hagakure and trapping them. He did this without talking to his teammates, which was bad. Though, Hagakure had the right idea by scouting ahead," Tokoyami adds on. "Communication breakdown was a major issue," All Might agrees. "They took actions that individually were good but together didn't mesh." "And 𝗵𝘃𝐸 went crazy," Kaminari says. "That too," the hero agrees, "and he will be disciplined for that." But that ties into the next point. What did the hero team do right and wrong? "They had a solid plan going in," Iida says. Jiru adds on. "Uraraka did some bomb reconnaissance too." "Was that a pun?" Midoriya wonders. Zero taps his helmet in thought. "Kirishima protected the hostages. They had a unified leader, unlike the villains," Koda whispers. "And what did they do wrong?" All Might asks. The class looks among themselves in confusion. As far as they could see, the hero team had done nearly everything right. Eventually, Midoriya speaks up. "We didn't secure the villains." Everyone turns to look at him, so Izuku clears his throat and clarifies his comment. "In most cases, being knocked unconscious only lasts a short time. We didn't secure 𝗵𝘃𝐸, Todoroki, or Sato with capture tape after we knocked them out. So by the rules of the exercise, they were still free to act, which bit us in the ass when we turned to look over the hostages and 𝗵𝘃𝐸 woke up." "Excellent point, young Midoriya. But watch the language." All Might nods approvingly, ignoring the face Izuku makes at him. "You should never turn your back on a villain you aren't 100% certain is down for the count. Many good heroes have paid for that mistake with life and limb." The hero team looks abashed as the weight of All Might's statement washes over the class. "Now, who do you think the MVP of the match was?" Almost in unison, the 19 people say Midoriya. At the same time, Midoriya says, "Yaoyorozu." 20 pairs of eyes turn to the blushing man as the class and All Might look at him oddly. "I'm just saying, we wouldn't have won without her. She ironed out the kinks in our plan," he explains, ignoring Mina's muttered, "You can iron out my kinks." Izuku continues, "She made the bug and the door explosives, and was the one to take out Todoroki. She held it all together." Yaoyorozu is blushing violently, red trailing down her neck and onto her chest as the class turns to watch her. Midoriya's cheeks warm as he realizes the praise he heaped on her. But All Might takes pity on them both and speaks up. "That may be true," he says. "But it was your plan she polished. Your idea to make the bug. And you were the one to take down 2.5 members of the villain team." A half? Shinsu took out Bakugo the first time, All Might explains. But most of all, you took command naturally and your teammates chose to follow your leadership. You did well. Young is Midoriya. That is why you are the MVP. Midoriya catches Toshinori's slip, but blushes under the praise as his quirk roars in approval in his head. Thank you all. Good, All Might exclaims. On to the next match. As All Might escorts the next two teams out, no one notices the appraising glance between the hero and Midoriya by Todoroki. That was really fun. Mina bounces along the path to the dorms, calling back to Midoriya, Ida, and Uraraka as they follow the energetic girl. For you, maybe? My ears are still ringing from Bakugo's blasts, Uraraka grumbles, slugging Mina in the shoulder. Uraraka, Ida chops his arms worriedly. If you're injured, you should go see recovery girl. I'm fine, the pink-cheeked girl assures. If it's still bad tomorrow, I'll go see the nurse, promise. Ida is lecturing them on the importance of health and physical fitness as the group passes under the shadow of the wanted dorm. But Midoriya tunes him out, focused on a personal revelation he had during the day. They walk in the door of the dorm. Midoriya sees several students who had walked ahead of their group lounging in the common room. Spotting the head of spiky hair belonging to Yaoyorozu, Midoriya makes a decision and heads towards the elevators. Hey guys, I'll be back in a second. I gotta grab something from my room. We'll be here, Uraraka and Mina chorus as Ida heads to the kitchen, grabbing orange juice out of the fridge. Midoriya slaps the button on the elevator and rides it up to the 5th floor. The man dumps his bag on his bed as he walks to his bookcase, looking for one book in particular. Seeing the thick tome, Izuku snatches it off the shelf and heads back downstairs. Hey, Yaoyorozu, Midoriya greets, taking the seat across from the woman as she looks up. I think I have something of yours. Oh, Momo looks up in confusion as Midoriya extends a vaguely familiar book to her. I didn't think that I left anything in the classroom, but I must be mistaken. Momo trails off as she turns the book of anatomy over in her hands, recognizing it as the one she had left at her uncle's agency and never found again, her eyes darting up to meet a pair of shockingly green ones. Where did you get this? Midoriya sits back in his chair, a satisfied look on his face. My mentor gave it to me, he explains. Since we met this week, I had wondered if the Yaomomo in the book was you. Looks like my hunch was right. The dots connect in Momo's mind, and she exclaims, Oh, you must be Uncle Yo-Yo's mystery student then. Midoriya chokes on nothing but air as Momo's nickname for Bastion processes. Yo-Yo? As Izuku sputters incoherently, Yaoyorozu waves her hands nervously at his overreaction. Sorry. Midoriya coughs out, pounding his chest awkwardly. I just never expected such a cute nickname for Usai. He is a tad intimidating, Momo nods. Honestly, I still just can't believe it's you. He told you about me? Never by name, Yaoyorozu explains. But every time he came to dinner, Uncle would have a new story about his prodigy of a student. Midoriya's cheeks tinge red at Bastion's praise. It would seem, Momo's eyes rake over Izuku's frame, that you have lived up to the hype. To call his previous color a blush would seem like an understatement as Midoriya does a remarkable impression of a tomato under Yaoyorozu's gaze. Awa, Mina interjects out of nowhere. Having snuck over to their side of the room while the pair wasn't looking, she flops over the arm of Midoriya's chair. Look at you two flirting. Momo joins Midoriya in blushing and spluttering as the two blurt out denials. We weren't, I wasn't. Laughter peals across the room as Mina cracks up. After a moment, she calms down and wipes the tears of mirth from the edges of her eyes. I'm just kidding. You guys are too easy. The trio lapses into easy conversation, Momo and Midoriya trading stories about Bastion, while Mina provides commentary. They reach a lull in the conversation, and Momo notices Midoriya observing her pensively. What is it? She asks. This may sound indelicate, Midoriya cautions, but I mean no offense. I noticed you seemed a little uncomfortable earlier, and I was just wondering if you wanted your hero suit to be so sparse. Wanted? No, Momo chuckles bitterly. But it is necessary. I need open skin for my quirk, so it doesn't destroy any clothes I wear. You don't like it, Midoriya surmises. No, there's too many eyes. Mina nods in agreement with Momo's answer, and Midoriya makes an on-the-spot decision. If I provided a design that fixed that problem, would you take it? Yes, Momo nods, cautious hope in her eyes. But I can't imagine how you'd be able to help. Let me try, Midoriya says. Can you make me some paper and pencils? Yaoyorozu nods, and the skin on her arm sparkles as a pad of paper and set of colored pencils springs into existence. Midoriya takes it and begins sketching something. Mina, who is still slumped over the arm of his chair, stands up, walks behind him, and props her head on his shoulder. "Oh," she exclaims, "I see what you're doing." Pointing at a section of the paper, she says, "Make that a little rounder and add some red in there." "What's going on?" Momo asks, craning her head to try and see the paper. Midoriya angles it away from her and waggles his finger in playful warning. It's a surprise. After a couple of minutes, and several more pointers from Mina, Midoriya puts down his pencils and hands the pad to Momo. "Here," he says, eyes eager and bright. "Tell me what you think." Momo's breath catches in her throat as she looks at the sketch. In deft lines, Midori had drawn her face, body, and a prototype costume. Rough splashes of color fill in the sketch, and Momo's likeness looks gorgeous on paper. What truly catches her eye, however, is the suit. Strips of red fabric crisscross each other in a V shape, providing tasteful cleavage space while also covering her vitals. An identical utility belt to her current one holds her tablet and holds up a yellow skirt-short hybrid, a skort. There's plenty of space on her legs for her quirk, but her boots no longer have heels on them, and they part at her shins and reform into knee pads in one continuous shape. The back is an open expanse of skin, but a red cape trimmed in gold hangs from her shoulders, providing cover. She must have been silent for far too long because Midoriya begins to ramble. The fabric is all a Kevlar blend, so it should be highly protective. The bands are all separate from each other, and your skin so items can slip out from under them while still protecting you. I left the back open for bigger objects, and you still have your legs and arms for creation as well, and the cape and new boots will provide protection and— Midoriya, Momo cuts him off. "Thank you. I love it." Midoriya blushes heavily, but Yaoyorozu misses it as she looks back down at the sketch. "It's amazing, but even if I send it in now, it will be weeks before the support company can get it back to me," Momo sighs, dejected. "I suppose I could wear a gym uniform." "Actually," Midoriya taps one of the pencils to his chin, "I might have a better way." "Oh." "Yeah," Midoriya grins, standing up and shooting a text to someone. "Come on, there's someone we need to meet." The pair waves goodbye to Mina as Midoriya leads Yaoyorozu back into the main building and through the hallways. They make small talk as they walk, and eventually, the tall pair stops in front of an imposing metal door. "What is this place?" Momo asks, reaching for the door only to be held back by Midoriya's firm arm. Before she can ask why, an explosion blows the door off its hinges and knocks her to the floor, a triumphant screech coming from behind it. "May," Midoriya calls, clapping his hands together to dispel the smoke. "You okay in there?" "I'm fine," a woman shouts back. "Then stop exploding doors when people are in front of them," Midoriya shouts back, helping a stunned Momo to her feet. "Come on," he says, leading her inside. "Let's get you a suit." They tiptoe around a pile of half-assembled pile of support gear, and Momo sees a pink-haired lady knee-deep in a robot. "Here you go, May." Midoriya tosses a data disk to the inventor, who catches it without looking. "Vi's footage from the exercise today." "Oh, goody," the woman says, dragging herself out of the robot, coveralls drawn tight over her chest as she hurries to a computer terminal in the corner. She wipes her surprisingly toned arms free of grease, and Momo watches the inventor snatch up a band of metal and toss it at Midoriya. "Here's that last baby we had planned." Midoriya slips on the intricate wristband onto his arm as the woman turns back to the computer, plugging in the drive. "Let's see our babies in action," she cackles. "May," Midoriya cuts her off, gesturing at Momo and handing 𝐻𝐡𝐚 the sketch of the suit. "We have a guest. She needs you to make her a suit." "Yes," 𝐻𝐡𝐚 shouts. My influence spreads. Handing Momo the drawing and sticking her hand out to shake, 𝐻𝐡𝐚 greets. "Hiya, future customer. I'll be making lots of babies for you." Momo is trapped in the whirlwind of interactions between Midoriya and the woman who is surprisingly attractive underneath a layer of machine oil and metal shavings. But the last comment grounds her in surprise. "Babies." Midoriya sighs. "Yaoyorozu, this is 𝐻𝐡𝐚 May, a genius support inventor and my best friend." May blushes slightly under the title, but Midoriya keeps talking and doesn't notice. "May, this is Yaoyorozu Momo, your new favorite person. Her quirk allows her to create anything as long as she knows the molecular composition." "Zuko, you know you'll always be my favorite," 𝐻𝐡𝐚 waves off, an excited glint appearing in her eye, making Momo nervous as she addresses her. But you and I are going to have so much fun. As the pink-haired inventor bombards the creation quirked woman with questions with Midoriya looking on in amusement, neither of them notice Momo slip Izuku's sketch into her pocket. I should have expelled you for that stunt you just pulled. Bakugo regains consciousness with all of the subtlety and pain of a car wreck, crashing upright and grabbing his head in agony. It takes a minute for Aizawa's words to penetrate the throbbing headache from his concussion, but 2 words stand out in particular. Should have. So why haven't you? The explosive blonde grits his teeth and shoots the question at his teacher. You can talk in a minute, Sonny. Recovery Girl's voice prompts Katsuki to open his eyes, just in time to see her wrinkled lips pucker against his cheek. His headache and dizziness fade away as the school nurse tracks his eye movements. That Midoriya sure did a number on you, but you should be fine, the elderly hero explains. If your symptoms return, come and see me. The nurse putters around the exam room for a minute before stepping into her office and shutting the door, leaving Bakugo and Aizawa to stare at each other in silence. Well, Bakugo shouts once the silence grates on his nerves too much. Why am I still fucking here? The unimpressed stare Aizawa levels at him tells Bakugo exactly how his teacher feels about his anger. You deliberately attacked your classmates with an overwhelming attack that you knew could cause serious injuries after being warned against it by All Might and being warned by me previously. So what? So what do you know about villain demographics and crime rates? Aizawa asks out of the blue. Specifically in February and March? What the hell does that have to do with anything? Bakugo growls. What's with the fucking non-sequiturs? Humor me. There's a spike in small-time villains, Katsuki says after a moment. The winter's end wackiness, right? Yes, Aizawa nods. Petty crimes perpetrated by teenagers with powerful quirks, usually meaningless and not thought out. Hence the media calling it the stupid name of wackiness. You're a smart kid, Aizawa snarks, full of laconic sarcasm. Surely you can figure out why. Entrance exams, Bakugo grunts after a moment. Exactly. Kids with semi-powerful quirks and bad attitudes who have been built up for years and told they are hero material fail the exam, Aizawa explains. And suddenly the rug is ripped out from under them. They have nowhere to turn, so they rob, vandalize, and assault. Eraserhead pins him with an intense stare. Kids just like you. Something inside of him goes cold as he realizes what his teacher is suggesting, and explosions pop off in Bakugo's clenched fists as he shouts. What did you just say to me? Calm yourself, Bakugo. Aizawa's stare flashes red and Bakugo's explosions are cut off as his quirk is erased. Are you a man or a rabid dog? Forcing deep breaths down into his lungs, Bakugo reigns in his rage, simmering beneath his skin instead of igniting his skin. I'm not a villain. I will never be a villain. Are you telling me you would never get angry and use your quirk on someone in public? That you'd never lose control and blow something up? Because from what I've seen of you, I don't believe that, Bakugo. So what? What now? Katsuki growls. I'd like to think that you have what it takes to be a hero somewhere deep inside, Aizawa tells him. You're talented, but it's overshadowed by your anger and ego. Is that it? Bakugo spits out. I'm not allowed to ever get angry? You can get angry, Aizawa shoots back. Anger can be useful. It can be motivating. If you manage it and harness it properly, it can make you a force to be reckoned with. But only if your anger is controlled and not allowed to explode everywhere, hurting others and yourself. Placated a small amount, Bakugo grunts in understanding. I cannot expel you and release a possible villain out into the world, Aizawa says, eyes flashing and cutting off Bakugo's interjection. But I also cannot allow your unchecked rage to be a danger to your teammates and civilians. Aizawa's phone dings and the hero pulls it out of his pocket, checking the text and nodding in satisfaction. Starting tomorrow you will be on probation. What? Bakugo asks. What the fuck does that mean? It means that, for the next 2 months, you will have detention during your lunch break, and you will be watched carefully, with any more infractions being punished severely, his teacher explains. Also, you will have mandatory anger therapy sessions with Hound Dog for the same period. Therapy? Bakugo shouts. I don't fucking need therapy, you shitty fucknut. Eraserhead's glare cuts him off once again, his look saying, it's either that or corrective custody. Seeing Bakugo freeze up at that, Aizawa sighs and rubs the bridge of his nose. You have to change, Bakugo, Aizawa says, unknowingly parroting Midoriya from weeks before as he stands up and walks towards the door. If you don't learn to control yourself, you will be expelled. I don't think you can do it, Aizawa says, opening the door and walking out, leaving a parting challenge in his wake. I hope you prove me wrong. The door shuts with all the finality of a gunshot, and Bakugo is left alone to stew in his thoughts. Today's first task will determine the course of your future here at 𝐴. Dread washes over the class at Aizawa's statement, their collective imaginations running wild with thoughts of more quirk tests and threats of expulsion. You all need to pick a class representative. Midoriya thinks he hears Kaminari mutter. But that's so normal, as Aizawa's statement registers and the class lets out a sigh of relief. Pick me, guys, Kirishima shouts, kickstarting the shouting from the rest of the class. I want to be the class rep. I'll take it, Kaminari says, quickly getting slammed by Jiru. Yeah, right, you're gonna want to pick me. Someone with my style would be. Mina cuts Aoyama's sparkly statement off. I'm like, totally the right pick. I don't think everyone is aware of the responsibility this would be, Midoriya muses as he watches his classmates' antics. In a normal school, it would just be a little extra work. But here in 𝐴, it's a heavier responsibility, proof that you can lead a team like a hero, and a way to get noticed by agencies and pros. He catches Yayurazu's eye and sees that the reserved woman is taken aback by their classmates' rowdiness, so he offers her a reassuring smile and a shrug as if to say, what can you do? Silence, everyone, please. Ida's shout cuts through the din, gaining everyone's attention. The class representative must lead others? That's not something just anyone can do. They must hold the trust of our fellow classmates. His arms chop rigidly. Logically, the best way to decide then would be democratically. We must hold an election to choose our leader. It's pretty obvious he wants us to pick him, right? Shinsu leans over and whispers to Midoriya sarcastically, causing the green-haired man to suppress a snort. Is this really the best idea? Yeah, Tsu adds on. We've only known each other a few days. How do we know who we can trust? Besides, Kirishima says, everyone is just gonna vote for themselves. Yeah. That's right, a couple of people chime in. Midoriya sees Ida flounder for a moment and speaks up, his tone pitched to carry across the classroom easily. So give everyone 2 votes. His statement commands the attention of the class, and they turn to him in unison. What? Midoriya sighs and explains his statement. If everyone will just vote for themselves, just give everyone 2 votes and say they can only vote for themselves once. It solves the problem of wanting to support yourself while also giving you the chance to put your vote behind someone else. That would work well, Yayurazu says once the class has thought about it. It seems good to me. Indeed, Ida exclaims, turning to address Aizawa. This is the best way, right, sir? Do whatever you want, Aizawa shrugs, cocooning himself in his sleeping bag and slumping to the floor. Just decide before my nap is over. Thank you for your trust, sir, Ida says with one final arm chop. Yayurazu produces slips of paper and Ida distributes them. After a moment of thought, Midoriya scribbles down 2 names and passes forward his slips, the rest of the class following in suit. Ida collects all of the votes and begins chalking the results up on the board, his broad shoulders blocking the winner till he turns and the class can see who the new class representative is. Midoriya's eyes track upwards till they reach the top, and he sees whose name is there, and he can't bite back his sigh. Fucking hell. I just don't understand, Midoriya says as his tray clatters on the surface of the cafeteria table. How I got so many votes. Shinsu gives him a look that says, don't be dumb, at the same time that Ida chops his arms officiously. You were clearly the right man for the job, Midoriya, the robotic man says, and the votes reflect that. But there are people more suited for the job, Midoriya argues, like you and Yayurazu. The creation quirked girl, sitting at another table with Jiru and Todoroki, had garnered the second highest amount of votes, making her the class's vice president. Nonsense, Ida says, straightening his glasses. As much as it pains me to say, I didn't show anywhere near as much leadership as you did during our combat exercises. I allowed myself to be walked over by Todoroki and Bakugo and it showed. Yeah man, Kirishima tacks on, attacking his pork cutlet with his sharp teeth and gesturing with his chopsticks. You really took charge and kicked ass. Ignoring Ida's indignant cry of language, Uraraka speaks up. As great as Yaomomo was, you were definitely the leader for the combat exercise. With her backing you up, Shinsu agrees, which is why she'll make a good VP for you. Still, Midoriya says petulantly, that doesn't explain where 7 votes came from. Well, Ida says, I voted for you and Yayurazu did as well. I voted for you. Deku, Uraraka says, And I know Mina did. I did too, Kirishima grins. I couldn't not vote for someone as manly as you. They exchange a fist bump as Shinsu says, I voted for you and Kaminari. Why those two? Uraraka asks, a puzzled finger on her chin. Well, being the class rep isn't ideal for the type of hero I want to be, Shinsu explains. And Midoriya was an obvious choice. What about Kaminari? Kirishima asks. I like the guy, but he doesn't seem to be the most responsible. Wouldn't that be a little chaotic? Shinsu shoots some finger guns at the redhead. Exactly. Ida launches into an impromptu lecture on the importance of not throwing away democratic votes. And when he's done, Midoriya speaks up again. That still leaves one vote unaccounted for, he says, slurping up some of his noodles. I wonder who it is. Wait, Uraraka says. You didn't vote for yourself? Nope. I voted for Ida and Yaoyorozu, Midoriya replies. Ida bows awkwardly from his seated position, his glasses parallel with the table. Thank you for your confidence in me, Midoriya. It's no problem, Ida, Midoriya waves off. And I thought I told you to call me Izuku. Of course, Izuku, Ida replies awkwardly. They return to their lunch, everyone at the table chatting aimlessly about light topics when Uraraka speaks up. Hey Shinsu, she asks. What did you mean when you said being a class rep isn't good for the type of hero you want to be? Yes, I was curious about that as well, Ida comments as the table's occupants turn to the purple-haired man. I want to be an underground hero, Shinsu shrugs. Popularity and visibility don't help much with that career path. Like Aizawa, right? Kirishima asks. Yeah, Shinsu chuckles sheepishly. Eraserhead is one of my idols. That must be so cool to be taught by him then, Uraraka chirps. 13 is my idol. I'd love to be taught by them. It would be really cool if I could get taught by my favorite, Kirishima agrees, flexing his biceps dramatically. But Crimson Riot has been dead for years. I just have to be manly like him. Crimson Riot was so cool, Midoriya agrees. Yeah man, Kirishima grins toothily. Being brave and helping people like him is the whole reason I want to be a hero. The redhead turns to the rest of the table and begins to ask a question when an ear-piercing siren screeches out, and the whole cafeteria descends into chaos. This is a level 3 security breach. Please evacuate calmly to your designated zones. What's a level 3? Midoriya hears Ida ask an upperclassman as their group is separated and swept off by the sea of humanity. Midoriya doesn't hear the answer, but in his head, his quirk is whispering urgently. Watch, 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 watch. He slams into someone as the crowd shoves into a crowded gangway. And as Izuku steadies himself and the person he nearly trampled, he recognizes Todoroki's blank gaze. Sorry about that, Midoriya apologizes, receiving a curt nod in reply. As the crowd gets rougher, Midoriya sees multiple people getting slammed into the walls and watches Shoji pull up a business student who almost got swept underneath the feet of the crowd. As if to echo his thoughts, Todoroki mutters, someone is going to get hurt. You're right, Midoriya agrees, turning to the dual-quirked man. How precise can you be with your ice? Enough. Freeze everyone's feet, Midoriya orders, and the other man slides his foot forward, ice crackling and rushing forward, freezing everyone's feet into place. At the same moment, Midoriya's quirk clashes in his head. Look up. His eyes dart upwards, and Midoriya sees Ida floating in the air and clumsily heading in their direction. His engines trying to propel him, but sending him off course. Midoriya shoots his hand up in the air, the appendage crackling with energy, and as Ida catches his grip, Izuku slams him forward with a burst of one for all, sending the taller man crashing into the wall above the entrance. Everyone calm down, Ida shouts from where he hangs precariously. There is no danger. We are students. We are supposed to be the best of the best. We must remain calm. He is right. Yaoyorozu shouts through a megaphone from the other side of the crowd. It is just the media. Remain calm and proceed to our meet-up points. As everyone calms down and Todoroki melts his ice, Midoriya sighs in relief. Thanks for your help, he tells the other man, extending his arm for a handshake. That could have gotten nasty if not for you and Ida. I'm not here to make friends, the heterochromatic man says after considering Midoriya's outstretched hand for a moment. That's fine, Midoriya says, not deterred. How about allies? Todoroki seems to think about for a second, his eyes clouded over slightly. Perhaps, he says curtly, nodding and walking away, leaving Midoriya's outstretched hand hanging in the air. Midoriya drops his hand and grins internally. You have no choice, Todoroki. Friendship is inevitable. I'm sure by now you've all heard that the intrusion earlier was just the press. Aizawa is standing tiredly at his podium at the end of class, staring out at them all. That should be the end of it. But I would like you all to keep an eye out for anything strange and talk to a teacher if you see anything. Aizawa flashes his quirk briefly, pinning them with his stare. You all did well in the cafeteria, but next time please try to keep the quirk use to a minimum. Everyone shuffles uncomfortably at that, and Aizawa eventually releases his quirk. Now, I believe Midoriya wanted to say something. Midoriya makes his way up to the podium and addresses his classmates. I know Aizawa already said it, but I'd just like to say thank you for keeping a calm head during the evacuation, and for voting me class president. A couple of people whoop quietly and Izuku shoots them a grin. I'd also like to say thanks to Uraraka, Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, and Ida for their quick thinking and calming everyone down. Hell yeah, Kirishima shouts. Emergency exit Ida, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Mina begin to chant, emergency exit Ida, while half of the class dies of laughter. Ignoring the antics of a bunch of barely adults, Aizawa catches the attention of Yaoyorozu and Midoriya. Stay behind, you two. I need to discuss class responsibilities with you two. Tomorrow the class will be taking a bus trip to an on-campus facility that is several miles away to do some rescue training. Aizawa watches the two class leaders vibrate with various levels of excitement as he continues. As class representatives, I am entrusting you with making sure everyone is prepared and well rested for tomorrow morning. We understand, Yaoyorozu says to their teacher. We will make sure that everyone gets to bed at a reasonable time tonight. I'll check that everyone has their suits as well, Midoriya agrees. Was that all? That is it, Aizawa says as he slides back under the table. For what it's worth, you two are excellent picks for class leadership. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu both blush slightly under their teacher's praise as they leave the classroom, walking back to the dorms where the rest of their classmates had gone. Midoriya is thoroughly enjoying the small talk he's sharing with the intelligent woman. But eventually, the rumbling of his quirk in his head is too much for him to ignore. Do you feel like something bad is about to happen? He blurts out. I just feel this sense of foreboding looming. No, I'm not feeling anything, Yaoyorozu replies with a puzzled look on her face. The only thing that is happening soon is rescue training, and surely nothing could go wrong there with all the teachers. Yeah, Midoriya agrees sheepishly. Just rescue training. What's the worst that could happen? I've always been told I'm blunt, but I like to think of it as me speaking my mind. Most of class want to turn Asui as the unblinking frog-quirked girl speaks up. What do you mean, Asui? Midoriya asks after a moment when it's clear that she won't continue. I thought I told you to call me Tsu, Asui counters. But that power of yours, it's a lot like All Might, isn't it? Midoriya is so busy internally panicking that he doesn't notice Todoroki perk up and start paying attention to the conversation. Thankfully for Izuku's panic, he has already thought of a refutation for this kind of comment beforehand. Yeah, Midoriya coughs out. I might be strong, but All Might doesn't use a sword. That's right, Kirishima chimes in as Asui puts a long finger on her chin in contemplation. Plus, All Might doesn't sparkle like Midoriya here does. I don't sparkle, Midoriya jokes with faux revulsion. That's Aoyama's gig. Still, Kirishima continues, hardening his arms dramatically. I bet it's handy to have an augmenting type of quirk. You look super flashy with all your green gear and lightning. My hardening is a useful power for defense and destroying bad guys, but it just can't keep up in that department. Hey, Izuku interjects, your quirk is plenty flashy enough. Besides, it's how you use it that makes you pro-material. Ignoring Mina, who is wiggling her eyebrows at him for some reason, Midoriya addresses everyone else listening. We're all pro-material, otherwise we wouldn't be here. The class dissolves into discussions of various quirks, with Tsu and Kaminari antagonizing Bakugo. Kirishima and Izuku fall into a debate about hero movies, which somehow devolves into a discussion about the Terminator, and then their favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Before they realize it, the bus grinds to a halt and Aizawa tiredly announces, Quiet down, we're here. Class 1 piles out of the bus and tumbles to a halt in front of a giant shiny dome with the letters USG emblazoned on the front. Universal Studios Japan. Some of their less astute classmates exclaim, causing Izuku to snort quietly. Not quite. The massive doors on the front of the facility crank open, and a familiar hero waddles out. Roman 6, Midoriya presses the activation button on his circlet headset. Start recording. It would probably be good to have a record of this. His assistant's quiet. Gotcha boss is eclipsed by the hero's exclamation. I am the space hero, 13, and this, 13 gestures grandly to the dome, is my custom rescue training facility, the unforeseen simulation joint. Uraraka seems to be vibrating so fast, she might reach orbit any minute. And Izuku vaguely remembers his bubbly friend mentioning that 13 is her favorite hero. They're kinda reaching on that acronym, Shinsu whispers to Midoriya, making him chuckle. Don't you think? Izuku shushes his sarcastic friend as 13 continues their spiel. The astronaut-themed hero leads them into the facility and begins lecturing them on how dangerous every quirk can be. Izuku pays attention to the speech. It's a serious topic, but he's also heard it before. Multiple times. From All Might, Aizawa, and Bastion. So he's probably not paying as good attention as he should be. Instead, he's surveying the facility, taking in all the zones. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees Aizawa approach 13, and 13 holds up 3 fingers in response to his question. They must mean All Might, Izuku realizes. He probably was supposed to be here, but used up all of his time. As if reading his thoughts, Yaoyorozu speaks up. Sensei, I thought there was supposed to be 3 teachers here today. There was, Aizawa groans, but All Might got caught up with the situation. He might be here for the end of class. Aizawa and 13 begin to explain the activities when an automated voice pipes up in Izuku's headset. Signal lost. Roman 6? Izuku inquires of his virtual assistant. Whatever response Roman 6 gives is drowned out as Midoriya's quirk goes haywire in his head. The slamming of metal, wood, weapons, and armor is deafening, and Izuku grabs his head in pain. Look, his quirk screams as Midoriya's classmates watch him in concern. Danger, 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 danger. Forcing his quirk to the back of his head with Herculean effort, Izuku's shout rips from his throat. Eraserhead. Midoriya's voice snaps out over 13's, cutting off the rescue hero and gaining his teacher's attention immediately. Something is wrong. Had it not been Midoriya, Aizawa might have scolded them for kidding around. Had Izuku used his name instead of title, Eraserhead might have missed the way a portal opens in the courtyard. He might have missed the nebulous darkness that spreads out and spits scores of villains into the school, his school. But it wasn't anyone else, and he didn't miss it. So after a moment's shock, Aizawa steals his mind, puts on his goggles, and draws his long hair into a ponytail. Wait, has the training started already? Kirishima asks, stepping forward with concern in his voice. I thought we were rescuing people. Stay back, Aizawa barks. This is real. Those are villains, Midoriya tells Kirishima, cursing under his breath as a figure covered in hands steps out of the portal and a hulking beast joins him. Real villains. No way, Kirishima gasps. How did so many get on campus? Why are no alarms going off? Todoroki asks. Either they're attacking everywhere on campus, or they have a quirk that is blocking our sensors. They're likely jamming our communications as well, Eraserhead agrees. Kaminari, try to use your quirk to contact the school. The electric blonde starts to send short pulses of Morse code through his headset, but shakes his head when nothing goes through. Aizawa doesn't seem surprised, and simply nods. Keep trying. Where is All Might? The hand-covered villain shouts, drawing everyone's attention. I went through all the trouble of bringing some friends to meet the number 1, and he doesn't even show up. Did they use the press break-in as a cover to steal a schedule? Eraserhead mutters softly. That might be how they knew where he was supposed to be. No matter, the lead villain grandstands. Maybe if I kill a few children, All Might will come out to play. Eraserhead's quirk snaps on. His hair is bound down, but his capture weapon is floating as he stares down the horde of villains. 13. Midoriya, get the class out of here. Get help. Shouta. Izuku's voice is soft as he addresses his teacher, his friend, his tone heavy with everything he's not saying. He knows this is bad. He knows that he fights better in one-on-one situations or surprise attacks, Izuku thinks. But he's keeping strong for us, so we don't panic. And I can't ruin that with my warnings. The teen opens and closes his mouth several times, before finally settling on a simple, be careful, trying to inject as much emotion into his voice as he can so his mentor understands his worry. The pro's eyes glint with understanding as he nods back. You should know by now, Midoriya. You can't be a hero with only one trick. With his capture weapon flying, he leaps into the fray. Cursing, Midoriya jogs after his classmates when 13 shouts for him. Midoriya, we have to go. Roman 6, you there? Always, boss. Midoriya thinks he might be imagining the tension in his virtual assistant's voice, but he pays it no mind as he instructs her. Cache all the footage since we came in and send it to all contacts with a distress call. Will do, boss, Roman 6 acknowledges. However, there is something unknown interfering with my connection. Damn, keep trying then, and let me know if you get through. Before the class can reach the locked door, a portal opens on the floor in front of them, and the gaseous villain billows out of it. There will be no escape. The collection of teenagers, led by a pro hero, skid to a stop in front of the warp villain. It is terribly impolite of us to drop in unannounced. The villain's voice is velvety and dangerous, like a dagger kept in a silk-lined box. I am 𝐀𝐦, and we are the League of Villains. Why are you here? 13 challenges, arrayed in front of the class in a protective stance. We decided that this haven of justice would be a fitting place for All Might, the symbol of peace, to take his last breath, 𝐀𝐦 says baldly, with a level of nonchalance that kicks the breath out of 𝐷𝐷𝐼's lungs. I do believe he was supposed to be here today, the villain continues, not noticing 13 pop one of the caps of their fingers. No matter, I still have a job to do. Izuku feels the air stir beside him and shoots out his arm, just in time so snag Kirishima by his costume, keeping the spiky redhead from lunging at the villain along with Bakugo. Die! Bakugo's roar drowns out the villain's next words as an explosion rocks the class back. The dust and ash slowly settle, and one gasps in unison as 𝐀𝐦 reforms unharmed. You live up to your school's reputation, he intones. But you should be careful, child, or else someone could get hurt. Enveloping the group of heroes in training in his mist, 𝐀𝐦 shouts, I will scatter you across this facility, to meet my comrades and your doom. Realizing his attention, Midoriya grabs the two people standing closest to him, Momo and Kirishima, and shouts, Todoroki, freeze us. There is no response but the crackling of ice. But as the darkness clears, Midoriya breathes a sigh of relief when he realizes that everyone is still there, frozen to the ground. Well, almost everyone. Baku bro. Kirishima's shout draws everyone's attention to the space between 𝐀𝐦 and 13, where the explosive blonde had been standing. The empty space. He must have gotten warped, Iida says. Tusk, 𝐀𝐦's irritated hiss draws attention back to the villain. No matter, if I cannot bring you to the fight, I'll just have to bring the fight to you. His warp gate spreads out again. But before anything can happen, a click is heard and 𝐀𝐦 is dragged towards them in a vortex of suction. What is this? The villain grits out as he struggles to drag his smoke out of the vortex. My quirk, 13 declares, hand outstretched towards the villain. Black hole lets me consume anything in my path. You will not hurt these kids. It's a pity, 𝐀𝐦 drawls, seemingly no longer worried. You could have made a great villain with that quirk. Shouts of shock echo as a portal opens up behind 13, and the hero's own quirk begins to consume them. Midoriya shouts, no, activating one for all in his legs and diving toward his teacher, pushing them out of the way. For a split second, Izuku feels the terrifying power of the black hole nipping at his heels before 13's quirk shuts off, and he sighs in relief. Are you all right? He asks, helping the rescue hero to their feet and examining the small rips in their costume with worry. I'll be fine, 13 waves off. You need to get your class out of here, class president. What? Midoriya turns to where 13 is pointing just in time to see 𝐀𝐦 warp in a huge selection of villains. Nearly half of what Aizawa was facing down in the courtyard. I'll keep 𝐀𝐦 occupied, but someone must alert the main campus, 13 orders. Right, Midoriya agrees. Midoriya dashes back to the class as 13 re-engages 𝐀𝐦 and relays the situation. What do we do, Deku? Uraraka asks. Wait, why are you asking me? Because you are the class leader, Midoriya, Iida says firmly. We placed our trust in you as president. Now you're great at planning, so what is the plan? Midoriya looks around at the rest of his friends, catching Shinsu, Momo, Mina, Uraraka, and Shoji's agreeing glances. When no one objects, Midoriya simply nods. Right? Izuku observes the villains crowding around them, keeping their distance because they're wary of the class's quirks. Putting years of tactical training from Bastion to use, Izuku makes a haphazard plan and looks up at his class, his friends, with determination blazing in his glowing green eyes. Here's what we're going to do. Mobility, Midoriya thinks, watching as 13 dodges around 𝐀𝐦's portals. Uraraka, Mina, Aoyama, and Shiro, he orders. Go help 13. Don't stop moving, avoid 𝐀𝐦's portals, and support our teacher. Right. The trio agrees in unison, Aoyama tacking on and we to the end. Unbidden, Todoroki makes a small glacier to clear their path, earning a thankful nod from Midoriya. Strength and utility, Izuku thinks. Momo, Shoji, Satu, once we get to the door you have to get it open and get Ida out. I will not abandon you all, Ida interjects. I can help in this fight. Ida, Izuku cuts down his friend's argument with a sharp word. You're the fastest one here. It's up to you to bring reinforcements, Midoriya entreats, staring into the engine-quirked man's eyes. We're counting on you. Izuku can see the moment determination crystallizes on Ida's face. I won't let you down, the 𝐸𝐴𝐻 swears. Good. The smell of mint sweeps the class as Midoriya forms his armor around himself, turning to the slowly approaching villains. Kirishima and Tokoyami, he says, considering his classmates' quirks. Get on my right and left. We're the tip of a V, a spear point that the villains will break on. If you're for close combat, Midoriya addresses the rest of the class as they slowly back towards the door. The crowd of villains stalking after them form the arms of the V on our sides. Midoriya's quirk has been getting more noticeable in his mind. The endless war. The cacophony of metal, swords, and spears crashing like thunder. After a moment's thought, he orders. Long-ranged quirks get behind us and fire over. Be careful not to hit us. If we work as a team, we can get through this. It warms Midoriya's heart to see his class listening to him without reservations. Kaminari and Ojiro align on the side of Kirishima. Asui and Hagakure are on Tokoyami's side. The class falls into ready stances as the villains get ever closer. Midoriya's armor flares brighter as his sword and shield forms in his grasp, and the thrumming energy of one for all crackles around him. Protect yourselves and your classmates, he orders as the villains prepare to charge. We have to get Ida out. The battle in his head roars louder and louder, his quirk humming in anticipation of a fight, a real fight. We can hold this line together, Midoriya swears, steady and strong, bolstering his friend's confidence. We will not let them pass. His quirk, for once, falls nearly silent, every ounce of instinct streamlined in preparation for a fight. The sounds of metal are no longer clashing and instead are melding seamlessly, a drumbeat against his soul. It's time to go beyond, he says, soft and firm, the calm before the storm. Izuku's classmates, his friends, cry out with him as the villains charge, and the lines crash, their voices tied together as one, roaring in the face of adversity. Plus Ultra. DAC 8C8 CBA 877 429, a B645 a 346 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬 14cc 1. The air is heavy. Heavy with the smell of mint and ozone. The scents warring heavily with sweat and blood as the villains and heroes clash. Heavy with electricity and pure power. The villains' charge breaks on the bulwark that is Midoriya, Tokoyami, and Kirishima. Izuku's armor deflects deadly blows and his sword darts out, the tip flicking into flesh, drawing blood, and nicking bone. Slashes powered by one for all knock villains off course and win them room to work. Attacks shatter on Kirishima's hardening. The stony man weathers every blow like a cliff by the sea, his rocky fists raining hammer blows on villains too weak to pierce his guard. Dark shadow wraps Tokoyami like a cloak, darkness dripping off his feathers like ink as pitch-black claws swipe at villains. Dark shadow's electric yellow eyes glare out from the shroud, as the sentient quirk absorbs attacks, and returns them with prejudice. Ojiro slams a villain with his muscular tail, while Kaminari grapples with another, lightning crackling around his arms as he acts like a human taser. Asui kicks with strength and grace, her enhanced legs smacking a villain back, while her tongue drags a floating villain out of the air. Midoriya can only assume that Hagakure is fighting as well. He can't see the invisible woman, but when villains randomly cry out or fall unconscious for no apparent reason, she must be there. Earjacks sneak over and around the front line as Jiru pierces the villain's guards and blasts her heart rate into vulnerable areas, injuring and knocking people out. Frozen spears from Todoroki shoot through their line, slamming into villains and disrupting concentrated attacks. The formation is hemmed by two mini glaciers, walls of ice that keep the class from being flanked by nefarious villains. Shinsu shouts insults into the fray, and when villains respond, the purple-haired brainwasher turns them on their comrades, sowing discord in their ranks. Midoriya knows, the same way he knows which direction to swing his sword, the techniques to cleave and slash. He knows that these villains are trying to kill them. Yet, with blood flying, power thrumming in the air, and a savage grin on his face, Midoriya has never felt more alive. Claws latch onto his shield, and Midoriya is too slow to send one for all from his legs to his arms to keep a hold of it. and the canine villain rips the shield from his grasp. Cursing, Midoriya lets the snagged shield dissolve. A bone-tipped tail slips beneath his guard before he can form another one and stabs through his armor, burying itself into his thigh. A roar of pain and a swipe of his sword severs the tail from its owner, but not before the damage is done. Guys, he calls to Kirishima and Tokoyami, cover me. The pair steps forward as Midoriya falls back, rock and shadow shoulder to shoulder as Izuku gasps for breath and examines the wound. The hole is clean, deep, circular, and oh so painful. The villain's barb has punched through Midoriya's armor and reinforced pants like they were paper. The muscle aches in a way that only deep cuts do, and it'll be a bitch and a half to heal. But Izuku can tell by the sluggishly pulsing blood coming from the wound that nothing vital has been hit. Digging into one of his belt pouches, Midoriya patches the wound with a gauze pad and duct tape, stemming the flow of blood. As he wipes off his bloody hands and tests the weight he can put on his leg, ensuring that he can still walk, Midoriya hears clanking behind him. Yaoyorozu, he calls to the creative woman. How's it coming? We're working as quickly as we can, the normally refined woman shouts back, strain in her voice. Izuku can see her cranking on a winch, trying to get the door open, as Sato and Shoji wedge on crowbars lodged in the gap, their strength warping the metal. The mechanical gears failed when the power went, Yaoyorozu explains. So we're working against the weight of the doors and the seized opening mechanism. Keep going, Midoriya instructs needlessly, tacking on some encouragement. You guys have got this. Izuku turns to Ada, the stern man quietly revving his engines in his ready pose. But before he can open his mouth to ask Ida something, a strangled squawk rings out behind him. Throwing caution to the winds and slamming one for all into his legs, Midoriya throws himself into a backflip, spinning in the air, and bring a brutal axe kick on the head of the villain who had just smashed Tokoyami's beak. A subsequent punch finishes the villain off, and as Midoriya falls back into his position at the head of the defensive line, he asks the bird-like man if he's okay. I will be fine, Tokoyami lisps through a suspiciously squished-looking beak. The foul knave caught me by surprise. It will not happen again. Fall back if you need to, Midoriya responds. There are medical supplies in my belt pouch. I think they almost have an opening for Ada. We just need to hold on a little longer. I will persevere. Izuku simply nods and throws himself back into the fight. He gets lost in the haze of battle, attention only on his allies beside him, and the enemies at the tip of his sword. Duck, pivot, parry, block, riposte, hew, parry. A deft spin of his sword wraps a villain on the wrist, knocking a club out of their hand. His quirk screams a warning and Midoriya only barely shields against the flurry of spikes flying at his face. We can't keep this up, Kirishima gasps out beside him, loosening his quirk around his chest and allowing himself to breathe. There's so many of them, we're gonna get tired before they do. Kirishima is right, Midoriya knows. The sword-bearing teen can already feel quirk exhaustion creeping at the edges of his awareness. The strain of keeping one for all activated and cycling from his legs to arms, as well as the energy required to keep his Green Knight arms and armor up, is beginning to make itself known. Were it not for his intense training at the dojo, and with all might, Midoriya might be at the end of his rope right now. If you need a break, cycle out, he instructs Kirishima, his pulse pounding loudly in his ears. We only need to hold out a little longer. Hell no, the other man grins toothily through his fatigue. It's not manly to quit, bro. A knife sparks off Kirishima's rocky forearms, and Midoriya throws his cracked shield at the villain who attempted to stab his classmate. I've got to figure out a way to strengthen my armor, Izuku curses internally. That's the third time I've had to ditch or dissolve my armor because it breaks. This is getting a little ridiculous. Slowly, Class 1 has whittles the villains down till only a few remain, most lying in clumps unconscious or unable to fight when a massive clang sounds from behind them. We've got it, Yaoyorozu calls. The door is open. Ida, Midoriya shouts as the other man's engines roar. Go. The speedster jets out of the wedged open door, and Izuku breathes out a sigh of relief. As if it is some inverted form of karma, the second he and the rest of the class let their guard down, Kurogiri warps in front of them. I see one of you brats escaped, the villain spits angrily. No matter, I can still scatter you to the winds. Wind rushes as Kurogiri's warp gate encircles the main section of fighters, and Midoriya catches sight of Uraraka, Mina, Zero, and 13 all thrown to the side, where they were fighting Kurogiri before Inkai darkness envelopes him and Izuku is falling into the abyss. You are not alone. 𝐜𝐡𝐬𝐬 materializes in the downpour zone, and the avian man binds Dark Shadow with an iron will as his quirk fights to have free reign in the dark. Come, he lisps to a soaked Coda, who had fallen with him. There are surely villains approaching. We must be on our guard. Kirishima smashes through a ruined roof, the fall doing nothing to his hardened form, explosions heralding his arrival. The redhead shakes rubble off of his body and turns to the commotion, where he sees Bakugo tearing through a squad of villains. Well, shitty hair, the explosive blonde shouts at him. Are you gonna fucking fight or what? 𝐬𝐬 brushes off the insulting nickname with a sharp grin, slamming his hardened fists together. Here I come, bro, 𝐬𝐬 hurtles through the conflagration zone, his tail and the dearth of buildings giving him the mobility to sneak up on the villain group hunting him. The heat is oppressive, but doesn't stop the tailed man from dragging one into an alley and slamming them with his tail, knocking them out. Todoroki freezes a quintet of villains charging him, the slippery ground of the landslide zone encased with ice as he stalks closer. Tell me, he threatens, stepping close to a villain's sickle. How do you plan to win? Shinsu chokes around the water in his lungs, coughing the stale liquid up onto the deck of the ship Usui had dragged him and Kaminari onto. Thanks, he tells the frog hoarsely. That was a close one. We're trapped here, Usui says after nodding. There's too much water for me to easily get us to land without getting caught by the villains. Too much water, you say? Shinsu walks up to Kaminari, the blonde watching the assembled villains, and grabs onto the back of his costume. I know just how to deal with them. Thrusting Kaminari forward, Shinu pushes him into the water of the flood zone. Pikachu, I choose you. What are you doing? The electric man squawks, panicking as the villains encircle him. They're gonna get me. You're in the water, you knock off Pokemon, Shinsu shouts back. Water is conductive. Oh, realization dawns on Kaminari, quickly followed by a smirk as electricity crackles around him. Indiscriminate discharge, 1,000,000 volts. As for Midoriya is falling. Wind rushes past his ears as he plummets headfirst towards the ground, surrounded by ruined faux skyscrapers. As the vestiges of Kirigiri's shroud evaporate, Midoriya sees the floor of the ruined zone approaching rapidly. Flipping around so he is upright, Izuku forms his sword and buries it into the building he is falling next to. His oral sword slices through concrete, the glowing green implement slowing his fall to non-lethal speeds, and Midoriya eventually drops to the ground with a quiet thud, even though he managed to mitigate his fall to the equivalent of a 2-story drop. Izuku's wounded leg still throbs as he lands, and he stumbles upright. Checking to make sure that not too much blood is leaking through his bandage, Midoriya looks up just in time to see a squad of villains thunder into his area. There are glacier off to his right, explosions behind him, and sounds of fighting off to his left, so Izuku is not likely to get any help. His quirk thumps in his head, pushing him to take action, but he reins it in. We don't need to fight, Midoriya calls to the villains, dissolving his sword as a gesture of goodwill. If you surrender now, the heroes will likely be more lenient in your punishment. Shut the fuck up, kid, the rock villain at the front bellows. I'm gonna pound your face into a pulp. Well, Midoriya sighs, I tried. Falling into a stance, Midoriya reforms his sword and armor, and one for all crackles around his legs. All right then, he grins, teeth bared and quirk clamoring in his head as he lunges into combat. Who's first? Are you okay, Jiru? The rocker girl stands back to back with Momo, both bearing weapons against the villains circled them. When they landed between the ruined zone and the landslide zone, Momo had been okay, but Jiru had sprained her ankle. Ieyasu hadn't had time to make the shorter girl a splint, because they had been surrounded by villains almost immediately. The creation quirked woman had managed to fabricate them both swords to fend off the attackers, but it wasn't going well. Jiru was a complete novice, focusing mainly on her ear jacks, and Momo was only able to tell her the basics before she had to put her own minimal training to use. Her uncle had taught her to use swords and bow in the past, but Momo hadn't kept up with her lessons, instead focusing on creating devices and gadgets with her quirk. One such gadget, the beefed-up taser she is holding opposite of her sword, is trained at the leader of the villains. If you approach us, she threatens, I will tase you. Damn kids, the villain charges her, and Ieyasu pulls the trigger, tasing the boar-headed man and knocking him out. Another lobs a massive stone at the pair, and Jiru blasts it out of the sky with her ankle speakers. Momo drops the spent taser, rapidly creates a launcher that slips out from the slits in her new costume, and fires the net gun at a lunging villain, tangling him into a ball. It continues that way, A few villains charging them and Momo and 𝐲𝐸 fending them off. But it's a losing battle. 𝐲𝐸 and her parry strikes from a villain simultaneously and 𝐬𝐬 grits out. We need to think of something, otherwise we… She lets out a cry of pain as something strikes between her ribs and gasping for breath. Momo stumbles back and looks down to see a spike lodged in her costume, but thankfully not in her skin. Yanking it out, Momo sees the wicked barb at the tip and realizes that if she had been wearing her original costume, instead of the one Midoriya made, she'd be injured or dead. 𝐬𝐬 𝐬𝐬. 𝐲𝐸's voice cuts through the haze she's in, and Momo looks up. Are you all right? The punk girl shouts at her, blasting away some villains with her speakers. Are you hit? I'm okay, she mumbles, standing up and slipping the spike into her pocket. We need to do something. Yeah, no shit, 𝐲𝐸 bites out, sending another heartbeat blast through her boot speakers, knocking a pair of villains out. The speakers themselves catch Momo's eye, and a plan rapidly forms. 𝐲𝐸, give me your boot. You want to deal with my ankle now? No, Momo rolls her eyes. I have a plan. The purple-haired girl shakes off her boot and nods when Momo says, cover me. All right, but hurry. Momo draws her tablet off of her belt and rapidly scrolls through blueprints and chemical equations. Where is it? She mutters, eyes scanning the screen. Aha, there. Momo, 𝐲𝐸 grunts, hacking at another rock-covered villain with her sword. Whatever you're gonna do, you better do it soon. I've almost got it, 𝐬𝐬 promises, tongue sticking out slightly as she connects two final wires. Got it. Lifting the boot, which now resembles a couple of irons stuck to a boot and a gun, Momo throws the device at the assembled villains. It lands with a thump. The squad of villains dives for cover and everyone braces, only for the device to do nothing. Slowly crawling from the places they lunged, one lizard-like man pokes at the device. What the heck is this? Guys, he turns to his compatriots. Hey girlie, what the hell is this? Momo simply smirks, takes 2 steps back with 𝐲𝐸 in tow, and says, boom. The device lights up, and before the villains can react, a sonic wave bursts out, throwing them all to the ground and knocking them flat. Holy shit, yeah Momo, 𝐲𝐸 says dumbly. That was awesome. Wait, Momo keeps her hold on the girl, wrapping them in a thick rubber blanket that extrudes from beneath her cape. It's not done. Before the slowly recovering villains can react, the bomb makes a beeping noise and sparking electricity arcs out, tasing the villains and knocking them out. You made a sonic taser bomb, 𝐲𝐸 deadpans, limping out and poking at the device. That is so cool. Yeah, a menacing voice growls. That is pretty cool. Momo turns around to see a villain half emerged from the earth, a creepy skull mask on, and most importantly a massive hand around 𝐲𝐸's throat. Before she can blink, a taser forms in her hand and Momo shoots the villain in the chest with it, only for the prongs to spark uselessly as the villain laughs. No, the villain waggles a disapproving finger in Momo's direction. Try something again and I'll crush your friend's throat. As if to punctuate his threat, his hand tightens around 𝐲𝐸's slim throat, causing the woman to choke slightly. 𝐬𝐬, the struggling woman gasps. Please, help me. Momo racks her brain for an idea, any idea that could help 𝐲𝐸, but comes up blank. She freezes, caught in her indecision. 𝐲𝐸, the smell of mint washes over them, and before the villain can react, a pair of red boots slams down onto his shoulders, forcing him to the ground. 𝐲𝐸 crumples to the ground and lets out a cry of pain as it further wrenches her already injured ankle. Motherfucker! Midoriya helps her into a standing position and straightens up himself, brushing the dust off his suit and onto the unconscious villain. Sorry I'm late, ladies. Electric green eyes meet black ones as he looks at Momo. I got a little held up. Signal restored. Machinery slams and cranks. Sparks fly and metal melts in the support course lab as 𝐻𝐡𝐚 tries to attach another arm to 𝐴𝐼𝐟. You are her and Izuku's sword baby. Music sifts softly from the background, but Mei doesn't notice till it cuts off and a notification sounds through the lab. Shutting off the welder, 𝐻𝐡𝐚 pulls her pink curls away from her face, rubs the grease on her hands off onto her coveralls, and picks up her phone. A video from Zuko, she mumbles, clicking on it. I wonder what it is. The video plays. Mei gasps in horror and drops the phone, sprinting out the lab and down the hallways. Principal's office, principal's office, principal's office, she gasps out, diving around another corner, only to find a hallway she doesn't recognize. Why is this so hard? Sprinting down another hallway, one of those strange boys from Izuku's class rounds the corner at the other end. They slam open the principal's door together and rush in. Principal Nezu, the 𝐻𝐡𝐻 is under attack. White furry man, the 𝐻𝐡𝐻 is under attack. Hey, Ada shouts at Hatsum. Have some respect. The furry mammalian turns to All Might. Go, we teachers will follow. The number one hero nods and throws himself out of the window, shattering the multi-layered glass. That was supposed to be unbreakable, Nezu murmurs, setting down his cup of tea and pressing a button next to his chair. An alarm starts to ring through the school as the principal turns to Ada and Hatsum. You two remain here. I will gather the other teachers. Wait, sir. Ida cuts over Hatsum's shout. Sir, with all due respect, I refuse to stay here. I had to leave my friends once, but I will not abandon them again. I can help, Hatsum adds on. If the facilities are still down, I can help get them running. Nezu's beady and human eyes sweep the pair, pinning them with the weight of his gaze. You will stay back, the principal instructs, and you will leave the fighting to the teachers. If you disobey, you will be suspended or expelled. You got it. Yes, sir. We should probably get to the entrance, Izuku mentions as he finishes tying up the last of the villains Jiro and Yaoyorozu had taken out. If the class is regrouping, it would be there. We need to avoid the central plaza. Take the long way around, Yaoyorozu says, looking up from where she is bandaging and splinting Jiro's broken ankle. Eraserhead is still fighting there. And I can't walk on this ankle, Jiro adds on, before snarking. You'll have to carry me, Green. Yeah, that's my bad, Midoriya rubs the back of his neck sheepishly. I didn't think you'd get injured when I dropped that guy. Are we just gonna leave these punks here? Jiro asks, pointing at the tied-up villains. Well, we can't bring them with us, Izuku snarks. And we don't have access to quirk suppressants to keep them down and out. Actually, Momo speaks up, drawing Jiro and Izuku's attention. I can make quirk-suppressing cuffs, but they're difficult. I can't focus on them and something else. Meaning, Izuku's shoulders slump. That you can't run and make them. And we can't stay here, Momo nods sadly. Well, Izuku brightens, straightening up. I guess I'll just carry you both. Eh? Did you forget part of my quirk is strength? Well, no, Yaoyorozu mumbles. I just kinda forgot. Okay then, Midoriya shrugs. If Jiro can hold onto my shoulders, I can carry you so you can focus on those cuffs. After sorting out their configuration, Jiro hops onto Midoriya's back, and he scoops Momo up into a princess carry, missing her blush as she hides her face against his chest. Hold on tight, Izuku calls back to Jiro as he fires up one for all in his legs. And Yaoyorozu, he looks down at the refined woman who is extruding quirk-suppressing cuffs, and thinks of the giant monster in the middle of the courtyard. Make a pair that is extra large. One for all crackles in his legs as Izuku takes off kicking up dust in his wake. They round up Shinsu, Asui, and a shorted-out Kaminari as they skirt the courtyard, and Midoriya instructs them to follow them to the entrance. Are you guys okay up here? Midoriya asks as he gently puts down Momo and lets Jiro off of his back. There were only a few of his classmates left up at the entrance of the 𝐻𝐡𝐻. Mina has Kurogiri pinned down, acid dripping from her fingers and sizzling against his neck armor, while Aoyama has his laser trained on the villain. Uraraka and Shiro are fretting over 13, using Shiro's tape to patch the gaping hole in the back of 13's life support suit. Sato and Shoji are ensuring that the villains class Wana took on originally are staying down. Here, Momo says, pausing in her construction of quirk suppressants to toss some to the strong pair. Put these on them. Shoji and Sato have just finished securing the villains when the trio from the flood zone jogs up. What's going on, guys? Shinsu asks. What's the plan? Our classmates are scattered through the facility, Shoji answers, arms spread out with eyes and ears on the tips. I can't see into the fire or rain zones, but likely some are in there as well. Aizawa can't keep that up forever, Midoriya adds, pointing down into the courtyard. Eventually, he's gonna get tired, slip up, or make a mistake, and then he'll be in danger. We can't abandon our classmates either, Midoriya continues. We need to round them up without alerting the villains in the center. Sweeping his gaze across the group assembled around him, Izuku slowly forms a plan. Yaoyorozu, can you make some communicators, as you did for the battle trials? The production of quirk-suppressing cuffs grinds to a halt, and Momo gasps from the exertion. I can, but that will probably be it until I can get some food. Looking over his friend, Midoriya's eyes catch on the way Yaoyorozu's skin seems to be pulled tight around her bones, and her ribs are visible beneath her costume. "Don't overdo it," Izuku entreats, squatting down next to her and rummaging in one of his belt pouches. "Here, have a meal bar." Midoriya keeps a high-calorie snack or two in his pockets, as well as first aid gear, and judging by the wrapped packages Sato and Uraraka are presenting Momo, he isn't the only one. "Thank you." Momo gushes around the food she shovels into her mouth, her normal refinement abandoned in the face of hunger. This will help a lot. After she finishes the food, and her skin fills out, lipids returning to her system. And damn if Izuku's fingers aren't itching to write down analysis on that. Momo turns to Midoriya and asks, "How many do you need?" Getting a head count of the group he wants, Midoriya tells her, 5. Once they're created, Midoriya tosses one to Tsuyu, Shiro, Sato, Shinsu, and Shoji respectively. "If you're down for it, you four should sweep the outside zones for our classmates." Midoriya points to the group, excluding Shoji. "And Shoji can use his quirk to coordinate and direct you to everyone and help you avoid villains." "Right," they agree in unison. "You think you can do that?" Midoriya asks Shoji. "You're our best option for a coordinator. We're counting on you." The many-armed man's expression is unreadable beneath his face mask, but after a moment Shoji nods solemnly. "I won't let you down." The group Midoriya appointed jogs away, and as Shoji slips the communicator into one of his many ear appendages, Midoriya turns to him. "Shoji, can you do something else for me?" When Shoji nods, Izuku continues. "Aizawa is going to end up in trouble. Can you keep an eye on him and let me know the second things go south?" "All right. I'm the only one here quick enough to get to him, and I'm familiar with his fighting style," Midoriya explains. "So I can help him." Midoriya checks on Aoyama and Mina where they're watching over Kurogiri, and is glad to see that they seem to have the seething villain pinned by his neck armor. Satisfied, Izuku rounds on Uraraka, who is fiddling around with 13's dressings. "How are they?" "Their suit got damaged worse after you guys got warped away. It took us a while to take Kurogiri down, and 13 kept the villain pinned while Mina snuck up on him." Uraraka looks up at Midoriya. He warped black hole behind them, and it ripped 13's suit apart. "We got it taped up, but it was touch and go for a minute." "You did good, Uraraka," Midoriya assures her, a steady hand on the woman's shoulder. 13 will be Oka, Midoriya," Shoji's shout. The signal that Aizawa is in trouble cuts him off, and Midoriya turns around in a flash. Slamming a massive amount of one for all into his senses, pain spikes in his eyes and time seems to slow down for Midoriya, just like in the battle trial. In the space between heartbeats, Midoriya sees the hulking purple villain bearing down on Aizawa, impossibly fast even with how slow Izuku is perceiving things. Izuku knows instinctively that he will never make it in time. A plan crystallizes in his head. One for all sheds off him like sparking electricity as Midoriya forms his spear in his hand. Grabbing Uraraka's hand, he slams all 5 fingers onto the weapon, removing its gravity and consequently any need to account for distance and elevation as he aims. Forcing 100% of one for all into his left index finger, Midoriya prays to any god that's out there that his training from double tap holds true, and throws the spear with incredible force. The full power of one for all shatters the bones in his finger, but Izuku knows it's a small price to pay to help Aizawa. The spear jets forward with a mighty crack as it breaks the sound barrier and slams into the beast, just as it reaches Eraserhead. "Hold on, Shouta," Izuku entreats, pulling 50% of one for all into his legs. "I'm coming." Aizawa is no stranger to one-sided fights. In fact, except for alley fights and ambushes that fall neatly into his unique style, nearly every fight he has been in has left Shouta at a disadvantage. This one, however, with nearly 50 villains arrayed against him, not counting the leader and his hulking purple bodyguard, is certainly one of the worst. If he had the option, if he wasn't trying to keep the villains contained in one area to give his students time to escape, Aizawa would have led them on a merry chase through the facility, stringing them out and picking them off one at a time with guerrilla tactics. Unfortunately, that isn't an option, so here he is, tiring himself out on the bulk of an invasion force. All things considered, it's not going as bad as could be. While a fair few of the assembled villains have mutations and heteromorphic type quirks, meaning he can't erase them, the rest are thrown into disarray when his covered eyes remove their quirks from play as he whittles them down one by one. The head villain, covered in hands and grumbling to himself off to the side, is watching Aizawa closely, likely looking for an opening or weakness he can exploit once 𝐬𝐻𝐬 is done picking off his cannon fodder. Luckily, 𝗏𝗏 had taken Midoriya's advice all those years ago and started tying his hair into a loose bun or ponytail during fights, removing one of his more obvious tells, the floating of his hair, while he can't do anything about the way his capture weapon floats. And he never did quite figure out why that happens. It can be played off as skilled maneuvering instead of a byproduct of his quirk activation. Eraserhead slams one of the few remaining villains, a man who has all the characteristics of a cobra, to the ground, putting him out of the fight. When the lead villain straightens up and mutters something just loud enough to hear. Tesk, I can't see this mini-boss's cooldown. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 turns in time to see the hand-covered villain charging him, too quick to be natural, shouting, I guess I'll just have to force an opening. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 dodges his swipe and lodges an elbow into the villain's chest, driving the air from his lungs, and through his pants for breath. The silver-haired man growls at the hero. I haven't been able to figure out your tells, Eraser. The villain swipes at the hero, snatching a bit of his capture weapon as triumph, disappointment, and anger flit across the small bit of his features visible to 𝐬𝐻𝐬. His quirk must be focused around his hands, 𝗏𝗏 realizes. I can't let him touch me. But I figured it kinda doesn't matter. The handy villain darts around 𝐬𝐻𝐬 again, throwing a quickly deflected kick towards his knee. Your eyes can't stay open forever. The pair trades a flurry of blows as the hulking purple villain looks on with dead eyes. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 desperately tries to keep the man, who is a whole different caliber of villain than the cannon fodder from earlier, at a distance while the hand-covered villain tries to close their gap. One way or another, his hand latches onto 𝐬𝐻𝐬's elbow as the other scrabbles for the hero's goggles. Everybody blinks. Two of those scraggly fingers dig under the seal of his goggles, and Eraserhead flinches reflexively, canceling the effect of his quirk on the villain. Careful there, hero. The title is full of mockery and disdain as the villain taunts him. And for a moment 𝐬𝐻𝐬 oh so naively thinks that nothing will happen. Or you just might fall apart. Pain blooms on his elbow, sharp, shooting, and constantly encroaching as his skin flakes away, quickly followed by his muscles and tendons as the villain's grip tightens. Decay, 𝗏𝗏 realizes, just like the gate yesterday. Pushing down the sensation of his nerves, screaming in agony, Eraserhead stomps on the villain's foot, making him reel back enough for him to wrench his injured elbow out of that deadly grip. Eraserhead catches a glimpse of a satisfied smirk beneath the edges of the villain's mask, and is not at all smug when his follow-up kick to the villain's knee wipes it away. You fucker, the villain howls as he limps away. Both of them came out of that fight damaged, but 𝐬𝐻𝐬 knows his wound is far more debilitating. The villain likely only sprained his knee, but on his own elbow 𝗏𝗏 can see the telltale white glint of bone beneath the bloody mess. Namu. 𝐬𝐻𝐬's head darts up from examining his wound, erasure active, as the villain commands his hulking companion. Kill him. In spite of 𝐬𝐻𝐬's activated quirk, the villain moves almost too fast to see, and for a brief moment, 𝗏𝗏 feels the air thrum with a power of a level he has only seen from All Might. The Namu vanishes from its position by the fountain, and appears a moment later in front of 𝐬𝐻𝐬, arms outstretched and grasping for the hero. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 is no stranger to one-sided fights. But, he thinks, panicking as the impossibly strong and fast villain rushes him, heedless of his quirk. It's never been as bad as this. The villain's massive hands wrap around his shoulders, and 𝐬𝐻𝐬's world goes red with unimaginable pain. The smell of mint overcomes his senses, and two cracks echo through the courtyard. His upper arms shatter, and something slams into the Namu, sending it stumbling back and dislodging 𝐬𝐻𝐬 from its grasp. The Namu is pinned to the ground on its back, a familiar glowing green spear buried directly where its heart is, still as stone. Ozone wars with the smell of mint as Midoriya appears, energy wreathing his legs and more rage on his features than 𝐬𝐻𝐬 has ever seen. Eraserhead, he acknowledges, falling into a defensive stance in front of the injured pro. Sorry, I'm late to the party. Relief grapples with worry as 𝐬𝐻𝐬's brain catches up with the events of the last few seconds. You shouldn't be here, kid. 𝗏𝗏's not so overwhelmed by pain that he misses Izuku's scoff, so he tacks on. But thanks for the save. Anytime. Now, Midoriya turns towards the villain with the decay quirk, anger in his eyes. I think it's about time you left. I think you should scram, brat. The hand-covered villain fires back at Midoriya. You're out of your league here. It's not in me to withdraw, Midoriya dramatically declares as his armor wraps around his frame and his sword ignites in his hand. Ah yes, the villain's eyes alight with recognition. The swordsman with a given power. Sensei told me about you. Given power. He can't mean one for all. How can he know about me? Midoriya wonders. Who is this sensei? You have me at a disadvantage, Midoriya fishes for information. Seeing how you know me and I don't know you. I am Shigaraki, the villain grandstands, arms stretched wide. The chosen of my master and here to kill All Might. How are you going to that? Shigaraki. Midoriya points to the 𝗏𝗡 still pinned to the ground by his spear. Blood leaking sluggishly from the wound. When your most dangerous accomplice is down. There was no doubt in Midoriya's mind that the hulking villain he had impaled was the one intended to kill All Might. He was just lucky that super strength couldn't beat a spear. Are you sure about that? A grin stretches beneath Shigaraki's mask. 𝗏𝗡, get up. Izuku watches in horror as the hulking villain drags itself to its feet. A sickening squelch sounding as it drags itself along the length of Izuku's spear. The wound heals rapidly as the beast staggers to its feet. Ink-eye purple skin knitting together as if it was never there. How? Do you like him? Shigaraki brags. Sensei created him specifically for the task of killing All Might. A beast stuffed full of quirks and obedient to my every command. Multiple quirks. It can't be. Realization dawns on Midoriya. The memory of a conversation with All Might nearly a year ago flitting across his mind. All for one. So a brat like you shouldn't be any challenge. Shigaraki finishes his brag before addressing the 𝗏𝗡. Kill him. Move, his quirk screams, steel clashing and ringing. The 𝗏𝗡 vanishes and Midoriya throws 100% of one for all into his eyes, supercharging his sight and reflexes, ignoring the small pain that accompanies it. Seeing the 𝗏𝗡 running at a seemingly normal pace, Midoriya cycles one for all into his legs and throws himself out of the way of the freight train of death. Just a second too late, Roman 6 screams. Duck, through his headset, echoing his quirk. Boss, I can't keep up with him. His assistant apologizes. He's just too fast. It's okay, Roman 6, Midoriya replies. Just keep an eye on everything else for me, and try to find a weakness. Sending his power to his eyes once again, Izuku barely catches sight of the massive fist headed for his chest before it slams into him, crumpling his armor and throwing him into the air. As he's flying, Izuku idly notes that Aizawa is barely conscious and on the floor before he slams into the fountain in the courtyard. His circlet and earpiece dig into the back of his head and his chest is certainly bruised, but Midoriya shakes off the pain. Hauling himself to his feet, Midoriya dissipates and then reforms his obliterated armor. At some point, constantly reforming his gear will take its toll. But he can't go without it. The blow his chest plate took would have killed him if not for the armor. HMPH, Shigaraki grunts. It seems that you're more durable than you look. Keep going, 𝗏𝗡. Flooding his senses with one for all again, this time accompanied by shooting pain, Midoriya manages to see the 𝗏𝗡 in time to get his shield up to block the punch. Shaking his head and his arm behind the cracked shield, Midoriya thinks, I can't keep doing this with my senses. Too much one for all is damaging to my body normally, so who knows what it's doing to my eyes. But, he thinks, ducking beneath a roundhouse kick from the 𝗏𝗡 and slamming a 50% smash into its side to no effect. I can barely see it without that technique. Brute strength won't work, little hero, Shigaraki taunts as the 𝗏𝗡 retaliates for Midoriya's punch, backhanding him across the courtyard. 𝗏𝗡 has a shock absorption quirk. His eyes throb and Midoriya can feel something dripping down his face. When he wipes off his cheek, there's red on his glove. Shigaraki's boast filters through the pain, and an idea sparks in his head. But is he sword resistant? When the 𝗏𝗡 strikes again, quick as lightning and just as hard to see, Midoriya doesn't try to block it, doesn't even try to swing. Instead, he just pushes his sword into the path of the blow and braces his arms with one for all, watching in horrified fascination as the 𝗏𝗡 severs its own hand at the wrist. The appendage flops to the ground, and when Midoriya tears his eyes away from it, the 𝗏𝗡 has already grown a new hand. One that is flying rapidly at his face. Crossed arms crackling with power block the blow, but Midoriya can feel his bones creaking as the force drives him inches into the concrete. Feeding one for all into his legs, Midoriya spins and swipes at the 𝗏𝗡's legs, knocking it off its feet and giving him time to get up. The only thing keeping him alive as Izuku trades blows with the 𝗏𝗡 are his instincts and the deft application of one for all to his eyes. I can't keep this up, he mutters as one for all crackles around him, the taste of ozone and blood in his mouth. Powered senses bring more pain and the sight of the beast charging him once again. And this time Midoriya buries his sword in its shoulder, only to have the blade wrenched from his hand as the 𝗏𝗡 swats him across the courtyard. The blade dissolves as he hits the ground, and to Midoriya's surprise, Roman 6 speaks up. Boss, Try using those quirk suppressant cuffs. How had he forgotten those? He had specifically asked Yaoyorozu to make the suppressants that he wastes no time snatching off his belt. In the aftermath of Shigaraki's revelations and Aizawa's state, they had slipped his mind. Looping the chain around one arm, Midoriya jumps to his feet, reforming his sword and forcing one for all into his eyes. What was once shooting pain has transitioned into a steady throb, and it intensifies as Midoriya's eyes glow with power, electric green staring down the charging Namu. The beast approaches in slow motion, and as it nears Midoriya, he throws together a plan. Between heartbeats, Izuku readies his sword and bleeds one for all into his legs, excess energy arcing and sparking off his surroundings. As the Namu gets closer, Midoriya gathers his powers and, like a matador before a bull, jumps. A burst of one for all sends Midoriya into the air, and he comes down roughly on the massive shoulders of the Namu. The beast thrashes and attempts to throw him off, but Midoriya wraps his thighs around its neck and sinks his sword into its shoulder to anchor himself. He can vaguely hear Shigaraki shouting something, but his attention is on the Namu's arms and his task. As one massive appendage darts up to try to grab him, Midoriya catches the wrist and wrenches it down, attaching a quirk suppressing cuff to one of its biceps. He's barely latched the second one to the other arm on when the Namu throws itself backward, slamming Izuku into the concrete. All of his air forces itself out of his lungs on impact, and Midoriya can feel a couple of ribs crack. With his quirk screaming at him to move, Izuku forces himself to roll as a massive fist vaporizes the concrete where his head just was. Okay, so apparently the cuffs don't work. Stumbling to his feet, Midoriya can see the broken chain between the two bands of the cuffs, the device still on the Namu's arms, but no longer connected to each other. It would appear as though that method was unsuccessful, Roman 6 tells him. Yeah, no shit, Midoriya grunts as he throws himself out of the way of the Namu once again, his sword darting out to score a strip alongside its forearm that will quickly heal. Except, tepid blood continues to drip down the Namu's arm, and the cut doesn't heal immediately like all of Midoriya's previous blows. Maybe it did work, Midoriya realizes. It just only suppressed one of its quirks. Putting his hypothesis to the test, Midoriya meets the next charge halfway. There's no artistry to the path of his sword, none of the elegance and grace that accompany his normal fights. The artificial beast is always 2 steps ahead of him, not in tactics or skill, but in speed. It's all Midoriya can do to try to predict where the Namu will be. Dust and wind kick up as they meet. The force of the Namu's punches leagues above Izuku's not insignificant blows. The clash and thrum of war echoes through Midoriya's quirk, as he positions his sword in the path of the Namu's swing and forces it to sever its own arm just below the suppressing cuff. When the Namu pauses in apparent surprise, Midoriya takes advantage of the opening to swiftly remove its other arm, sword catching on the bone before cutting through as he darts out of reach. There's an audible thud as the arm hits the ground, and the 4 in the courtyard freeze simultaneously. The Namu stands stock still, gaze locked on its missing appendages, seemingly blue-screened mentally. Aizawa hauls himself into a sitting position, fighting back unconsciousness and agony as he prepares to activate Erasure. Midoriya crouches, poised and prepared for an attack on all sides, dark blood dripping off the tip of his sword and seeping through the cracks of the pavement. Shigaraki's hands are twitching, his shoulders are shaking as he frantically scratches at the flaky skin of his neck. Fevered muttering becomes louder and louder as he has a breakdown. No, this shouldn't be possible, the villain rasps, his mask darting back and forth between Midoriya and the maimed Namu. Namu, finish him. A bird-like head snaps upward, beady eyes locking onto Midoriya as he drops his sword and shield, the implements dissolving before they hit the ground, and forms his spear in his grip. One for all crackles in his legs as the Namu's muscles tense, and they lunge towards each other, the Namu's toothy jaw gaping as it roars at Midoriya. Deep in the thing's throat, Midoriya can see a faint green glow, but before the Namu can activate whatever quirk it's trying to use, he drives his spear through his throat with a burst of one for all, sinking the tip deep into the ground and pinning the Namu on its back. For extra measure, Midoriya kneels, draws his steel dagger from its sheath, and drives it next to the spear, ensuring that the Namu will stay trapped. Staggering upright, Midoriya plods away from the armless and twitching monster, stepping in between Shigaraki and Aizawa, Mint sweeping the courtyard as his armor reforms. How about we revisit that idea from earlier, Midoriya states firmly. I am very armed and very angry. Izuku levels his sword at Shigaraki, electric green eyes, as sharp as his weapon, piercing the villain. So why don't you make like a tree and get the fuck out? Midoriya, don't antagonize the supervillain, Aizawa rasps through his pain as he watches the standoff. Midoriya, naturally, ignores him. It wasn't supposed to go this way. It wasn't supposed to go this way. Shigaraki's feverish scratching has only gotten wilder, flecks of blood staining his hands as he mutters. That was our anti-all might, our unbeatable obstacle, he growls, glaring at Midoriya, and it got taken down by some fucking NPC. The scratching pauses and Midoriya stiffens, preparing for action. It doesn't matter, Shigaraki straightens up, voice barely audible. I can't let Sensei down. Hands held down and out, Shigaraki rushes Midoriya, his voice peaking in a shout as he goes. I'll just have to take you out myself. As Izuku leaps into action, he hears Aizawa call out. Midoriya, watch out for his hands. He can decay things. Right, Midoriya mutters to himself. No touchy. Shigaraki is fast. Like, really fast. While not as quick as the enhanced Namu, the villain can more than keep up with Midoriya when he's not using one for all. As much as he'd like to, it's incredibly difficult to use one for all effectively. The inherited quirk, at its core, is a close quarters quirk. Getting too close to Shigaraki's deadly hands is a death sentence. So Midoriya is forced to keep his distance, fending off the villain with his sword and bursts of one for all. Every few swipes and slashes, Shigaraki will get his fingers on Midoriya's sword or shield, and the energy-based weapons are apparently not immune to decay, forcing him to drop and reform them. They war back and forth on the pavement of the courtyard, dipping in and out of cracked craters from Izuku and the Namu's battle. Midoriya is getting tired, and too many close calls with Shigaraki's hands make it obvious. His movements are still elegant and lyrical, drumming a beat to the battle in his head, but each swing comes just a little slower. Midoriya nicks Shigaraki's left shoulder, the blade biting deep and drawing the first blood of their fight, as well as a howl of pain from the villain. He dances away as the other man charges, sword flicking out like a viper's tongue and piercing his left forearm. All of Bastion's anatomy instruction coming in handy to incapacitate the villain. Shigaraki reels back, blood splattering on the ground. You fucker. Shigaraki is dangerous in his rage. Reckless moves that Midoriya can't predict break through his guard, again and again, decay arcing across his armor and his hero suit, narrowly missing skin. Eraser, Midoriya shouts, as he grapples with Shigaraki, one deadly hand caught in an armbar. A little help would be nice. I can't erase his quirk without getting yours too, Aizawa shouts back from where he's propped against the fountain, panic and worry warring with pain. You need to make some space. Just do it, Midoriya says, kicking Shigaraki's knee and falling backward when the villain lunges after him. Kid, you'll be defenseless. What was it you said earlier? Eraser? Despite the ferocity of the fight, 𝐻𝗓𝗓 is watching. Midoriya has an amused smirk on his face as he addresses Aizawa. You can't be a hero with only one trick. In spite of himself, a chuckle escapes 𝐻𝗓𝗓's lips. Fine, kid. I hope you know what you're doing. Shigaraki swipes at Midoriya, his forearm batting away the glowing sword and reaching for his head, 5 fingers making contact with his helmet. Now, Eraser, Izuku shouts, desperation in his voice as his armor flakes away, decay spreading to the circlet he wears. Aizawa's eyes snap open, erasure active as he pins the pair with his stare. He can feel decay vanish, the taste of ash and rot on his tongue as the vicious quirk is suppressed. Midoriya's quirk takes more effort, the minty taste fading away, but the taste of ozone resists, stretching out before eventually snapping away. 𝐻𝗓𝗓 watches as Izuku uses one last burst of crackling energy to Sparta kick Shigaraki away, and sighs in relief as the progress of decay stops on his gear. Midoriya stands up straight, and Aizawa notices that he is fiddling with some band on his wrist. Now, let's dance. A subtle button on his cuff loosens the device, and as Midoriya draws his hand away, a skeletal sword folds out of the device, shining high-tech steel that flashes in the light as he moves. It was Hatsume's pride and joy, a portable sword made of collapsible material in the form of a bracelet, allowing Midoriya to remain armed, even in situations where using his quirk isn't an option, like now. Not hearing the clamor of his quirk in his head is still a novel experience, and the lack of warmth from One for All is disconcerting. But Izuku shakes away his unease and dashes towards Shigaraki, skeletal sword raised. The villain looks torn between attacking Midoriya or fleeing, his hands twitching like he wants to wrap them around the hero's throat before he makes his decision. Izuku is a whirlwind. None of the lyrical grace that is evident when he normally uses his quirk can be seen. His moves are still strong and smooth, but artistry has been traded for brutality. Constant sessions of quirkless sparring with art. 𝐸 have honed his skills to be efficient and deadly, each move designed to end the fight early before he can get hurt. For all his change of style, Shigaraki is keeping up admirably, lean and strong. He still manages to bat away most of Izuku's attacks, but not without cost. Cuts and stripes of blood litter his arms and shoulders, each cut, shallow or deep, denoting a point where Izuku slipped through his guard, piercing flesh and weakening the villain. In contrast to earlier in their fight, where avoidance of Shigaraki's hands had Midoriya on his back foot, Izuku's relentless onslaught has the villain stumbling backward. Midoriya's sword flicks up and scores a slice on Shigaraki's cheek, cutting through his mask and leaving it hanging awkwardly. Then it's over. Shigaraki's heel catches on a piece of rubble, and he falls backward. Before the villain can blink, Izuku's sword is poised against his throat, blood staining the shiny blade as a thin line wells up along Shigaraki's patchy neck skin. "It's over, Shigaraki," Midoriya declares, green eyes shining bright with anger. "You're done. Surrender now." Beneath his hand-shaped mask, Shigaraki's mouth opens and closes like a dumb fish, no sound coming out as he flounders for words. "All you heroes are the same," he bites out eventually, resorting to violence at the first sign of opposition. "And you call us the villa?" Shigaraki's monologue is cut off as a massive boom is heard from the entrance, and both of their attentions are drawn to the cloud of dust that is kicked up. "Have no fear, for I am here." All Might's signature phrase booms out from the entrance, and Midoriya breathes a sigh of relief, muscles slumping slightly as he relaxes. Taking advantage of Midoriya letting his guard down, Shigaraki shouts, "Namu, kill the swordsman." One for all sparking. Midoriya turns just in time to see the still-pinned Namu inhale deeply and screech, the smell of acrid mint sweeping the courtyard as emerald fire spills from its maw, melting the dagger that had kept it pinned. Very familiar emerald fire. Smoke puffs from a fire-breather's mouth, eddies of vapor, and the smell of mint occupying the child he bounces on his knee. The Namu struggles to its feet, flame dripping out of its glowing throat as it stares down Midoriya. A tall man's throat glows like an ember, expelling tiny wisps of flame in fascinating shapes from his mouth. "You'll be a great hero," he tells a small green-haired boy, a smile on his face as his son rambles about heroes and all might. "You'll make us proud." Footsteps crater the cracked pavement as the Namu charges, a screech echoing from its razor-sharp maw as it bears down on a frozen Midoriya. Armless, but not harmless. A massive jacket swamps his gangly frame, the smell of old leather mingling with faded smoke and mint, the scent of family and of home. It can't be, Midoriya thinks dazedly, memories overwhelming him, of family and home, of mint and flame. The Namu slams into him full speed, razor-sharp teeth chomping down on his shoulder, teeth cutting through his armor and his flesh like it's nothing. He has one last thought before agony shoots down his arm and rips a ragged scream from his throat. "Dad?" As the teeth sink deeper, severing muscle and scraping bone, Midoriya's world is consumed by agony. A burst of air pressure brushes Izuku's hair across his face as his eyes flutter open, the last dredges of unconsciousness clearing his mind. Through hazy vision, Midoriya takes in the tableau of violence that is the courtyard. The normally bold colors of the Namu and All Might are muted as they trade punches, the air pressure blowing back anyone who tries to get close. There's blood on All Might's scorched shirt, and as his dad, the Namu sends bolts of fire towards the hero, Midoriya notices that one of the suppressing cuffs has fallen off, and the Namu has regrown one arm. Bakugo blasts in from the side, barreling towards the warp villain with a savage grin. Just as quickly, the villain opens a gate and sends him away. Izuku's quirk clamors quietly, the muted sound of battle nearly inaudible. Shigaraki is perched on the fountain, watching All Might struggle as he gingerly bandages the worst of the wounds Midoriya left him. The Namu suplexes All Might, but is unable to control the man with only one arm as the hero rolls out of its grip. Izuku can feel his heart pounding faintly as the Namu's existence overwhelms him. "My dad," he rambles internally. "It can't be. My dad can't be this villain, this monster." "Stop and think," a voice that sounds like Aizawa cuts through his rising panic. "Put those analysis skills of yours to work. What do you know about the quirks in clay?" More silent blasts of air pressure jostle Midoriya as he struggles to form coherent thoughts. All for one can give and take quirks, he eventually manages. The Namu has multiple quirks including a strength mutation, shock absorption, regeneration, And my dad's quirk. What do you know about All for One? The not Aizawa voice asks. Nothing. The only thing that's ever seemed close to it is copy quirks, Izuku reasons. But copy quirks usually can't do mutations because it puts too much strain on the body changing. Oh, like lightning, realization cracks through the haze in his head. If the mutation is the Namu's original quirk, then Midoriya latches onto that thought like it's a lifeline in a stormy ocean. It might not be my dad, wake up. I can't afford distractions with everything that's going on, Izuku faintly thinks, suppressing his realization. I need to take stock of myself. His leg is injured, he recalls. His eyes are throbbing, and it is hard to breathe around his cracked ribs. But what draws Izuku's attention is something else. Wake up, successor. Midoriya's arm feels wet. Looking down at the offending appendage, Izuku's gaze catches on the red dripping from his fingertips. Izuku's eyes trail up his left arm, following burnt fabric and rivulets of blood to their source. A massive bite wound on his shoulder. Clear teeth marks are ringed with burns, slicing through muscle and sinew. Deep beneath the rivers of blood, Midoriya can see the pale white of bone. Boss. Boss. Wake up. Vi's shout slams Izuku out of his haze of shock, and his attention stretches, and then snaps the world back into place with a burst of color, sound, and pain. Midoriya's gritted teeth are the only thing that stops an agonized shout from ripping past his throat as the pain of the Namu's bite hits him full force. Breathe, boss, Roman 6 coaxes. You've been hurt pretty badly. You need to stop the bleeding. His virtual assistant's steady voice coaxes Izuku out of his panic. With a shaky breath, Midoriya takes stock of his injuries and reaches for his first aid kit. I can't. His fingers scrabble on his belt pouch. The first aid one just barely out of reach. Roman 6, I can't reach my bandages. Recalculating options, Roman 6 replies, voice glitchy and static-filled due to the damage to his headset, but still operational. Flipping down his eyepiece, she continues. If you slice along the seam here, you should be able to roll your sleeve into a makeshift bandage. A crude animation shows on his display. A clip art knife scores a glowing line against the arm of Izuku's costume, and then animates the sleeve rolling up over his shoulder. If you form your armor, it should apply enough pressure to stop the bleeding, Roman 6 finishes. Right, Midoriya grits his teeth as he bends and retrieves one of his spare knives from his boot. Here goes nothing. It's difficult to follow his assistant's instructions with his fine motor control dulled by pain, but Izuku manages to saw through the less durable seam of his costume and roll it to cover his massive wound. Note to self, he thinks as his armor flares around him, gritting his teeth as the oral plates press the makeshift bandage down. Tell Mei to reinforce the seams. They aren't quite cut-proof. Izuku pants for a second before forming his sword and planting the glowing green tip into the ground to leverage himself upright. He sways for a second, his head hazy with pain and blood loss, but steels himself and takes in his injured arm. His blood-stained fingertips twitch slightly as he attempts to move them, but as a whole, the appendage is dead weight. I need a sling, he mutters. This will just get in the way. With awkward movements, Izuku loosens his belt and shimmies it upwards and over his arm. Once past his elbow, he cinches it down, pinning his arm to his side. That'll have to do. Taking in the chaotic scene of the courtyard once more, Izuku's eyes land on Aizawa, and his blood runs cold. His friend and teacher looks much worse than the last time he had seen the man. Arm still broken, the erasure hero is lying face down in a pool of slowly expanding blood that's leaking from a nasty head wound. Stumbling over to him, Midoriya gingerly rolls the man over, mindful of possible spine injuries. Carefully, Midoriya kneels down and slings his teacher over his uninjured shoulder and goes to stand up. Izuku takes one step before he falters, nearly falling as unknown hands press against his back. Holy shit, are you Oka? Izuku's sword skates off Kirishima's neck, the other teens hardening, protecting him from Izuku's gut reaction. The redhead's eyes are wide, blown out in shock at Midoriya's fast and deadly reaction. Easy dude, he cautions. It's just me. I didn't mean to surprise you. Shit, sorry, Midoriya says, wrinkling his nose. I'm a tad on edge right now. I can see that. Kirishima's gaze sweeps over Midoriya, taking in his scorched suit and limp arm. Are you even good to move, dude? I'm fine, Midoriya says, taking another step towards Aizawa only to falter again as his knees start to buckle. Okay, maybe not fine. Kirishima's firm hands press against his abdomen and back, holding him up, and Midoriya winces at the pressure on his cracked ribs. "We need to get out of here," Kirishima says once Midoriya steadies himself, examining a bloody Aizawa. "He's bleeding a lot." "You need to get him out of here," Midoriya stresses. "I need to go see if I can help down there." "Man, you've got to come with us. You look like you're about to fall down," Kirishima frowns, and he gently slings their teacher over his shoulder. "Your arm looks real bad and your eyes are bleeding." Izuku touches his hand to his cheeks and is surprised to find red coating them. As he wipes away the blood, he thinks, "Note to self, don't use the one for all eye trick till I figure out what it's doing to me." "Okay, I'll just take a look then." Plastering a tired grin on his face, Midoriya reassures Kirishima, lying through his teeth, "I'll follow right behind you." The ringing of steel in his head urges him to continue the fight, but Izuku wrestles it under control. After searching his face for a moment, Kirishima seems to take his words at face value and nods. "I'll hold you to that." Watching the redhead limp away, Midoriya lets out a sigh of relief. "I'm sorry, Kirishima, but I can't walk away while All Might needs my help." Duck. Izuku is jogging toward the fight when his quirk screams at him. Heeding its warning, the injured teen ducks beneath a cannonball that sails inches past him and slams into the ground near All Might and the Namu. Looking around wildly, Midoriya discerns the source of the cannonball. Up at the entrance of the 𝐬𝐻𝐍𝐿 Urazu has created a massive cannon and is firing rounds down the stairs. What is she doing, he wonders, putting some distance between himself and the firing path. As if in answer, another round rockets down the stairs and slams into the ground between the Namu's feet, removing the beast's stable base and allowing All Might to break the grappling deadlock the pair of equal strength had found themselves in. Brilliant, Midoriya thinks in rapture, staring up at his classmate. She's amazing. Shigaraki's voice floats across his attention and draws Midoriya out of his reverie. Our Namu isn't doing as well as Sensei had hoped. Perhaps if it hadn't been softened up by the brat from earlier, Kurogiri comments, it would be performing better. Maybe, Shigaraki replies, scratching idly at his throat. No matter, the villain stands from his perch on the fountain and begins stalking toward the fight. I guess I'll lend a hand. Panicking slightly, Midoriya draws his last knife and hurls it at Shigaraki, the razor-sharp blade slicing off hair as it narrowly misses him. Miss or not, it does what Izuku had intended and distracts Shigaraki from All Might. A roar draws Izuku's attention away from the blue-haired villain as another cannonball slams into the Namu, only to fall to the ground, negated by its shock absorption. It takes a monumental effort for Izuku to drag his attention away from the thing that might be his dad, but when he does, his blood runs cold. Shigaraki's deadly hand is reaching through a swirling portal that is inches from his head. Midoriya's blade is moving, sweeping upwards to block the ashen fingers, but even with one for all, he knows it'll be too slow. Shigaraki's hand is millimeters from his face, close enough for Izuku to feel the villain's body heat, when twin explosions ring through the courtyard. The hand jerks back through the portal as it snaps close, and as Midoriya turns in the direction of the blast, Bakugo's familiar voice shouts at him. "I just saved your damn life, fuck nugget." The explosive blonde is looming over Kurogiri, one hand crackling with explosions against the villain's neck brace, and the other still extended from where he had blasted Shigaraki across the courtyard. The villain leader is sprawled a few meters away from Izuku, clothes smoking as he groans and drags himself to his feet. "The next one's on me," Midoriya calls back to Bakugo. Despite their mutual dislike, the other man had just saved his life. "There won't be a next time if you don't fucking pay attention," Bakugo replies, a disgusted look crossing his face at the thought of Midoriya saving him. Midoriya turns to Shigaraki, reforming his sword and facing off against the villain. "Right. You're a persistent one," Shigaraku growls at him. "Aren't you, swordsman?" "So I've been told," Midoriya answers warily. The pair begins to circle each other. "I'm surprised you got up again after our Namu dealt with you," Shigaraki comments. "I do enjoy seeing heroes bleed that much." "You're not looking so hot yourself." Midoriya nods toward the villain's bloody bandages. "Why don't you give up and leave?" In truth, neither of them, hero or villain, looks particularly healthy. Both are limping, covered in blood and burns. Shigaraki's bandages from where Midoriya had stabbed and cut him are slowly turning red, and Izuku's arm is still bleeding. Shigaraki, apparently, doesn't take being told to leave very well. At least that's what Midoriya assumes as he darts out of the way of the villain's charge. "You brats mess everything up." Like a repeat of their earlier fight, the two meet in the middle. Shigaraki slaps his sword aside and lunges for his throat. Midoriya kicks out his knee, and make some space in between them. He would be using his spear to keep that gap, but using it one-handed is too difficult. It's only his quirk and his hours and hours of training that let him eke out on top of every clash. Both of them are tired, sloppy, and in pain. What were once lightning-quick slashes and stabs are now slower and poorly aimed, barely managing to cut into Shigaraki. Shigaraki has the advantage here. For all the times that Midoriya's blows connect, the villain only needs to grab him once for it all to be over. One for all powered kicks keep Shigaraki back when his sword doesn't, but Izuku can feel himself tiring. I need to finish this, Midoriya thinks, catching Shigaraki's hand on his armor and planting his elbow into his chest as his armor crumbles. And quickly, casting around for any option, Midoriya lands on a method that if it works will end the fight, and if it doesn't, well, it won't matter then. Here goes nothing, he mutters, turning and sprinting away from Shigaraki. Izuku can faintly hear All Might shouting something at the Nomo, but is too focused on his plan to pay attention. Hey, don't run away, brat, the villain yells, running after him. I'm gonna turn you to dust. Ignoring him, Midoriya reaches what he gauges to be enough distance and slams 30% of One for All into his legs, leaving a crater in the pavement as he jumps the air. Forming his spear in his good hand, as he soars above the fight, Midoriya looks down on Shigaraki. Feeding as much One for All into his arm that he safely can, Izuku cocks back the spear and calls out the same move he used at the entrance exam. As Midoriya shouts, another voice joins him. Detroit Spike. Plus Ultra. As quickly as his spear shoots downward, the limp Namu travels up. The full force of All Might's blows sending it hurtling past him, green fire still spewing from its mouth as it punches through the dome of the 𝐴𝐡𝐢 and vanishes from sight. Izuku has just a second to process the defeat of the creature that might have been his father when the shockwave from All Might's punch catches up to him and blows him and his spear off course. He lands heavily near All Might, the steam that's rolling off his mentor's body scalding his skin. Are you all right, young Midoriya? Toshinori asks, eyes pinned on Kurogiri and Shigaraki as they recover from the blast, Bakugo having been knocked out by the pressure wave. I've been better, Izuku answers, standing shakily and walking to All Might's side. You? Time's up, All Might says, more to the villains than Midoriya, but Izuku catches the double meaning. Toshinori has pushed One for All as far as he could. Moving could force him to his weakened form. Izuku isn't doing much better. His quirk is thrumming quietly in his head, but between his injuries and quirk exhaustion, he's not sure he's got much fight left in him. So the hero and the student stand side by side, strong forms hiding their momentary weakness as they stare down the villains. No, 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 Shigaraki's frenzied mutterings float across the courtyard. It shouldn't have gone this way. His rambling grows in volume and intensity. All for Sensei said, Sensei promised. Toshinori and Izuku both stiffen at Shigaraki's slip of the tongue. It's over, Shigaraki, Midoriya says. Surrender. The smell of mint, slightly acrid, but still strong, sweeps the courtyard as Izuku steps forward in front of All Might, his sword drawn. A deterrent. You can't hope to win this, Midoriya asserts, bravado he doesn't really feel filling his voice. You could barely handle me. How do you plan to beat the greatest hero of all? Perhaps the hero is right, Kurogiri tells Shigaraki. The other heroes will be here soon as well. Perhaps it would be wiser to retreat, regroup, and attack when we are stronger. No, the other villain cuts him off. The symbol of peace dies today. Midoriya slides into a ready stance, his sword braced in front of him. Don't try it, Shigaraki. I can't let Sensei down, Shigaraki says, undeterred. I'll just have to finish this myself. Shigaraki stumbles into a run, heading straight for Midoriya and All Might, deadly hands outstretched. Izuku drags One for All to the surface, power flickering sluggishly over his upper body as he braces for a last-ditch attempt at fending off the villain leader. Shigaraki gets closer, and closer, and closer. Midoriya can feel the aura of rage coming off of the villain and raises his sword to strike when gunshots echo through the 𝐴𝐡𝐢. Rounds slam into Shigaraki and knock him off course as Snipe unloads into the villain, brass piercing his shoulders and hands. Kurogiri covers the howling Shigaraki with his quirk, but as the pair of villains vanish, angry red eyes meet Midoriya's. This isn't over, swordsman. The conviction in the villain's threat sends chills down his spine, but Midoriya lets out a sigh of relief as he finally vanishes through the warp gate. All Might and Midoriya are still on edge, quirks activated as their eyes sweep the courtyard, on the lookout for a last-ditch sneak attack. as a wall of stone blocks the view of the rest of the facility. All Might deflates and Izuku's armor flickers and vanishes. Toshinori's sigh of relief is interrupted by a hacking cough as blood coats his mouth. That was a close one, the hero says, slumping down to the ground as he tries to catch his breath. I don't think I could have held on for much longer. Too close, Midoriya agrees, remaining upright. He's pretty sure that if he allows himself to rest, his injured body won't let him move again. Heads up, the younger man says, spotting movement around the edge of the cement wall. Detective Tsukachi and 𝐸𝐸𝐸 round the corner and relief coats their features as they take in the injured pair. Toshinori, Tsukachi says as he skids to a stop. Midoriya, I was worried when I got your distress call, but it looks like you two are okay. We've been better, Midoriya says, wincing as the dull pain in his head makes itself known and pain radiates down his injured arm and ribs. It's nothing recovery girl can't fix. Thanks for the save, Ishiyama, All Might tells 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 as he tries to stand up, clutching his injured side. Anytime, the cement hero responds, holding out a hand to help Toshinori up. We've got your back, All Might. Toshinori stares at the outstretched hand for a long moment, something indecipherable in his eyes. His bony hand slaps into 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸's as the other hero levers him upright. All Might's voice is oddly heavy. Thank you. Roman 6, Midoriya instructs, drawing Toshinori, 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸, and the detective's attention. Eject a copy of all footage since we got off the bus. Understood, boss, the virtual intelligence in his headset answers, and the damaged device whines slightly as a data card slots out of the side. Scratching an A into the card, Midoriya makes eye contact with Tsukachi and says, now delete the last 5 minutes of footage and eject the edited version. Roman 6 complies, and Midoriya answers the detective's unspoken question by handing him the pair of data cards. The one with the A has All Might's secret and Shigaraki's parting shot, he explains. I figured you'd want that kept secret. Smart thinking, Midoriya, Tsukachi praises, carefully slipping the footage into his pocket. You should go get checked out by the paramedics, he continues. That arm looks pretty nasty. I will, Midoriya nods as he starts to trudge away. And detective. Yes? The Namu, Midoriya's voice falters for a moment. It had my father's quirk. But Tsukachi is well acquainted with the situation around Izuku's missing father, having been the detective assigned to the case all those years ago. I know what I saw. The exhaustion in Izuku's voice doesn't mask the steel in his response. Just, please look into it. Of course, Midoriya. The walk up the shattered stairs of the US entrance takes only a few minutes, but to the flagging Midoriya, it feels like an eternity. Tsukachi spirits All Might out of a back door, away from prying eyes, and 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 joins his fellow in sweeping the ust for villains. But Izuku pays them no mind. The clashing of war retreats to the back of his head as he trudges past broken concrete and debris, his exhaustion relegating the ever-present war to a whisper. The puncture wound on his thigh is throbbing with every step, and his cracked ribs are making it harder and harder to breathe. Izuku's armor still shines around his injured arm, but the glow is dull instead of brilliant, the smell of mint faint and bitter. The searing pain in his arm is the only thing keeping him conscious as he nears the top, and the dull throbbing in his eyes has morphed into a headache. The entrance has barely come into sight, and through the broken doors, Midoriya can see the rest of one milling around with the police and paramedics. He has barely registered the relief in his classmates' faces as they catch of him when a pink blur slams into his chest, nearly knocking Izuku back down the stairs. Izuku staggers back, wrapping his uninjured arm around a crying 𝐻𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 to keep them both from falling. Easy, May, he murmurs into her hair as her tears begin to soak his suit. I'm okay, I'm fine. Be careful, 𝐻𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸, Uraraka fusses as she jogs over to them. You could hurt him more. The pink-haired girl jerks back, a look of horror on her face as she takes in his injured state. Midoriya catches her wrist before she can get too far and drags his best friend back in for a gentle hug. It's okay, he tells her, exhaustion coating his soothing tone. Just be a little gentler. 𝐻𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸's panicked expression falters as she runs her hands over his damaged suit, her fingers tracing burns and cuts along the green fabric. Her crosshair eyes lock on to the partially decayed headset, and she carefully lifts the device from his brow. It got damaged, she says faintly, looking over her creation. I'm sorry. It saved my life, Izuku says, both Roman 6 and the helmet. May looks up into his green eyes, absorbing the sincerity in his gaze. After a moment, the pair is shaken out of their reverie by someone clearing their throat. Uraraka grabs their attention, an amused glint in her eyes. The rest of the class is anxious to see you too. And you need to see the paramedics. Right, Midoriya agrees, extricating himself from Hadesmi's grasp, but still keeping her close. I need to check on everyone. As the trio makes their way to the crowd of people, a tired-looking Yaoyorozu steps into view. Midoriya, she says, looking him up and down with concern blatant on her face. You're okay. I was worried when I heard you scream. I've been better, Midoriya says with a grimace. How are you? How's the class? I'll be fine with a bit of rest, she replies. Just some quirk exhaustion. Her back straightens as she steps into her role as class vice president. Mr. Aizawa and 13 were injured badly, but have been stabilized and rushed to the hospital, she reports. But as for the class casualties, aside from minor bruises and scrapes, there were only 5, all of which the paramedics have taken care of. That's good, Izuku slumps in relief as he hears that everyone is okay, a tired grin stretching across his face. It could have been much worse. They make their way through their classmates, with Izuku greeting and checking in on everyone. He claps Jiru's shoulder comfortingly as an empt bandages her leg. All right there, Green? As soon as I get patched up, he tells her. Kirishima shoots him an indecipherable look, and Midoriya winces as he remembers lying to him. Tokoyami is getting his injured beak wrapped, but the two share a nod and Ajiro grins tiredly as his burns are treated. Todoroki simply stares at him as Izuku checks in on the dual-toned man wrapped in blankets, and Midoriya moves on awkwardly. His vision is starting to get blurry as the uninjured portion of the class crowds around him, questions filling his ears as they ask what had happened to him. I saw you taking on that big purple thing, Mina shouts. You went up against that thing All Might fought. Your scream scared us. We couldn't see what had happened, Asui croaks. Your sparkle shone through, Aoyama dramatically exclaims, drawing odd looks. Are you okay, Midoriya? Shoji's eyes are concerned over the top of his mask as he looks over the green-haired man, taking in the blood dripping from his fingertips. Actually, Izuku sways slightly as blood loss catches up to him, blackness encroaching on his field of view. Everyone stops talking and looks at him. I don't want to alarm anyone, he slurs, but I'm gonna pass out now. Exclamations rise from his friends as Izuku's knees buckle. The last thing he hears before darkness claims him and strong arms catch him is multiple shouts of, Midoriya, you are not alone.